My guest, Abigail File, otherwise known as Abby, is a heart-centered coach and somatic leader for heart-centered entrepreneurs. She is a formally trained somatic coach, a business mentor, and guide for those of us who do coaching or entrepreneurial stuff. Just this year, Abby started an amazing community for entrepreneurs and coaches called Bay Society. And Bay Society is a people-centered, innovative community that shares, well, I'll let Abby tell you some more about it.
Should I start with talking about this?
Go for it.
Okay, yeah, so Bay Society just officially started last night. So I've been working on it for months and then soft launched it just a couple of weeks ago. We have already, I think we're at 29 as of last night of our first 50 founding members. There's a special promotion right now just for our first members. And the call last night was like fire. It was just like pure magic. And like one of the top comments, I was reading through the chat box right before we got on our call actually, and someone said this 58 minutes changed my life. Like I feel like I'm alive now. I'm with people that are my people. And I started this because after working with so many people and plus obviously my own personal experience, I've been an entrepreneur for 12 years now. I'd say the number one thing that everyone agrees that we all kind of feel in this journey is like alone. You can feel really lonely. And we need other people to connect with and to share our stories with and to know that we're not the only ones struggling with this. We're not the only ones with these sorts of challenges. And we have resources that we can share with each other, things we can learn from each other. So my big vision for Bay Society was to first and foremost create a space where people could feel like they're connected and they can collaborate, but also where they can learn, because in the coaching industry, there's a lot of pay to play and you got to pay big to play. Yeah. And for new entrepreneurs, that is typically not very feasible. And we're one of the hardest industries to break into just across all small businesses, any industry. There's about a 30% failure rate in the first 2 years. But that's dramatically changed when it comes to the coaching industry. If you're a coach or a consultant or a wellnesspreneur, your failure rate in the first 2 years is 80%. That's how much harder it is to break into this industry versus any other. And so like we need help. People are needing help and a lot of them can't afford to hire me for support. They can't afford to hire most business coaches for support. And yet they need some of the basic information just to get started. So Bay Society is a space primarily to support those new entrepreneurs and also for people who are a little bit further on the journey, actively growing their business and want to plug into a network where they're going to find this is where we get referrals is from our network. Our network is our net worth. So having people that align with our values, know who we are, give a shit about the work that we're doing, they're going to refer people to you. And contributors within Bay Society also get to add value to the group, which means that they're directly pulling clients from the group as well. So it's a win-win model. It's definitely my passion project. I started as a second business in addition to, or aside from my business that I've been running the last 3 years, Vibrant AF, which is my personal brand for my private coaching and my small group masterminds. So this is like a whole new venture that I have been dreaming about for years. I was going to start something very similar to this in 2020, at the end of 2020. And timing wasn't right. It was just not the time for me to be pursuing that. The universe told me. The universe was like, this is the way. And then
backed up that decision. Yeah.
Definitely. And now it's just like, I feel this like just deep groundedness of like, this is what alignment and action looks like. I waited for the timing. I've trusted it. I haven't pushed myself beyond my personal capacity. I've been somatically supporting myself. And I've watched this grow mostly word of mouth. I've sent 2 emails about this, and the 2 emails that I sent produced 14 new members, but that's it. That's all I've done. I've shared it with people I've known. They've shared it with people they know. I'd say there's at least 7 new members who I've never met. They're not on my social media. They're not on my email list. I don't know them, but they know somebody who's in this space. And that is the power and the magic of our relationships. So it's really cool.
I totally agree. Absolutely. It's beautiful. And it does get lonely for us entrepreneurs sometimes, and we do need just a place where we can bounce ideas off of each other or learn a little something. And the point that you made about, just starting out as a coach or a solopreneur, like the failure rate is so incredible because we're floundering, we're getting all these different messages
Oh
and
yeah.
they're very intense. And sometimes, pardon me, sometimes they seem a little boy club-ish, like I love my male business coach friends, but sometimes it's a boys club,
Yeah.
and it's a very one certain type of thought process to get through and do the things. And what I love about you and appreciate about you is having this, you've got this ever evolving alternative thought towards business and entrepreneurialism. And you're ready to like start busting through some of this programming that we've all been receiving on how to business.
Oh, and that is the key right there. There's so much programming around how to business. I love how you just said that. And so much of it, here's my personal philosophy and what I've seen directly is that anything works, everything works, but not everything's going to work for you. And finding the thing that works for you and your business is really a personal journey of authenticity. And that's something that is both an inner journey, but we externalize it through our businesses. Most people who are probably listening to this or care about a summit like this are people that give a shit about the work that they do. They really want to make a true impact on people. And it's also a personal liberation journey for themselves as well. They're offering to other people something that they've also worked through on their own. And a lot of times we're coming to these, we've come to this realization, I have something to share. I have something I want to contribute to the world. I see that it's needed. I needed it. Now I've used it. I want to share it with other people. And that's beautiful. But then we're programmed with how to business. And our programming for how to business is through this very capitalistic lens. Capitalism and business are two different things. The point of business is to share your occupation, your trade, your value, your service. The point of capitalism is profit. Two different intentions. And so a lot of people conflate capitalism business like they're the same thing when they're two very different things.
Yeah.
And we do live in a capitalist society. So I obviously help my clients make money. I run two multi-six-figure businesses. I've helped grow one company to a multi-million-dollar business. So I totally understand profits are important, but I think the key is that we don't want to be creating profits at the compromise of the people who are purchasing things from us, or at our own compromise, like compromising our own values or feeling good about the way that we go about it. And there's a lot of programming and messaging around the way that you should go about growing your business to produce profit. And it leaves people out of the picture completely.
Well, and it burns out the audience to a great degree too, because they're tired of hearing the same messaging. They're tired of getting sold. So yeah, absolutely 100% all of the above that you just said.
What's been really interesting about what you just said too, in my experience with sharing Bay Society, is there have been a few people who are suspicious and cautious about this because they're so used to being sold on something that's high ticket. And I am a fan of high ticket, but it needs to be appropriate to what you're buying. They're suspicious because they're like, what's the catch?
Yeah.
Where are you trying to catch me? Because what we're used to is win-lose situations, win-lose scenarios, because it's all about the power dynamics. Somebody gains while someone else is depleted so that person can gain. And that's the programming we mostly come to our life with, but especially once we get into the business world, that's it's like the water that we're swimming in. It's like an assumption that most people who enter the business world are like, this is the thing I just have to get used to. I just have to get used to this. Like I can try to hold to my values, but like, I just have to, deal with this, put up with this and figure out how to navigate it. And I don't believe that is necessary. I think you can definitely break the box and you can create something for yourself that really is a playground that's win-win for your clients and for yourself and still profit.
And don't you think that some of it is some of that like suspicion comes from people just trying to like part the sea of coaches to find the ones that are truly authentic and not just putting up a front?
Absolutely. I really think that is fair. I think it's really legit and it's very fair. I personally follow very few coaches. I used to have tons of people because, when I first got into coaching, I'm like, I've got a long business background, but the coaching world is something I entered officially 3 years ago. I started dabbling it about 5 years ago when I was going through my somatic training. And I was like, okay, I got to come into this with like a beginner's mind. I can't just come in here and be like, yeah, I know everything because I've been running business. I run a multiple six-figure business, right?
Some people do.
Right. It's true. I think I definitely went a little too far in the humility side of things, and maybe too much of a student, because it was like an avalanche, like a fire hose of information. When I first started, I joined a high ticket, what I thought was a mastermind for coaching. It was not. It was a $8,000 content library with 20-minute coaching calls that I had to get through within 8 weeks with somebody who didn't know me and didn't remember me week to week. Which was a huge shock. I definitely didn't expect that. And I kept a pretty good face about it for quite a while. I was like, it's the sunk cost psychology, if you're familiar with that. Like I spent literal money and time and energy into this. And I'm like, other people liked it. There was all these reviews. I'm like, there must be something here for, like, value wise for me.
Right.
And ultimately it was an anti-learning experience. There was value for me, but it was really in like, this is not how I want to show up for people. This is not how I want to share the work I do with people. And so I started following all these coaches. I started trying to find the people, that really I resonated with.
Yeah.
And I had so many people on my Facebook. It's like everything, all my timelines were just filled with these coaches sharing these like crazy inspirational things and saying really extreme stuff to kind of get attention, of course.
To kind of hook you in, right? Yeah.
And a lot of times it really worked. But at the very beginning of this year, I went through some really personal and traumatic things with my family and my personal story, which I'm happy to talk about, but it's not relevant to this. And it really pulled me into the space of introspection and also awareness of what my consumption was and what I was allowing to filter through me. And I was really noticing that I was feeling this like disconnection with my own voice and my own mission, because I was just that like constant stream of other people's voices and other people's visions that were not necessarily aligned with me, but I was just observing. And so I had this moment, and one day I went onto my Instagram account and I opened up the list of all the people I was following, and without any discrepancy, it unfollow until I got to 0. And then I went on Facebook and I downloaded a timeline tracker or blocker. There's a free Chrome extension that you can install on Chrome, and it will block the timeline on your Facebook. I blocked the timeline on my Facebook so I can't see those things. And I deleted the Facebook app off my phone. And I was like, I might be crazy because I'm a business coach, but I just can't be inundated with all of this. Like if I'm going to be consuming, it needs to be aligned and intimate. And this is neither of those things. I'm feeling disconnected with my own voice. And that was for sure one of the best things I ever did.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I can totally relate to the humble train, because it's a lot for me to step off that.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress. But I also wanted to address what you were saying, like, with all the messaging that we've received, like how to business and stuff, like, what would you say the biggest myths are that entrepreneurs are told about marketing business online?
Oh, the number one is that social media is the master key. It is not.
Yeah. I think the best analogy I've ever heard about that is like social media is rental property. Your website is your home.
Amen. And so is your email list and anything else that you own content wise. There's a lot of things to explore and unpack with that, but I think it's something that coaches and consultants especially really need to hear this, because if you are on social media, most of us are, and you get into the coaching world, what are you probably going to do? You're going to probably follow some coaches who are succeeding. And guess what? How did they succeed? Well, they succeeded via social media. And so you assume unconsciously that is also the way to do it because they're telling you that is the way to do it. But the facts don't tell that story. So if you go to the Coaching Federation's website, you look at all of their up-to-date stats on the coaching world, how things typically work. So we're a $15 billion industry. And to break it down for you, about 10% of that $15 billion is generated through social media. Only 10%.
Well, the algorithms always change, so we're sometimes we're seeing a lot and sometimes we're seeing hardly at all. And, there's this new trick of putting the link in the comments instead of in the post. And there's all kinds of these ever changing list of rules and nuances to be apprised of. And I think my quote that I said was from Marie Forleo. She's just like, social media is great for conversation. That's where you nurture those relationships, but that's not where you do business. You do business with your website, and that's through your email list.
Yeah, and there's other ways to do it that I like to talk about, but the first place that anybody can start with a strong email list and having some kind of website. I also want to share that it isn't necessary to have a website in the beginning. I operated without a website and generated multiple six figures without one for 3 years. So it isn't something that you absolutely have to have, but you do need something that will allow people to almost like a portfolio. Not that extreme, but something that allows people to come into your world and then binge a little bit, which can be on a website, it can be on a blog, it could be a podcast, it could be your YouTube channel or a Vimeo, something that allows people to learn more from you. Which for a long time, I actually did use my Facebook timeline for that. It was probably not the best thing. And I also had a private Facebook group, which is another great place for people. But I've shifted my strategies because the long story long is, like you said, it's still rental property. And things are always changing. The algorithm has changed and my posts don't get seen as much. I can look and see if they've been seen, and they're literally not being seen at the same rate that they were last year. But sending emails out does work because people do have that moment of more undivided attention. When we're on social media, we are the product, right, of social media. And so they're asking more people to interact and to get on there, right? And it's just full of noise. And so when I'm on social media, I'm not really there I really don't get on there very much anymore, actually. But when I'm on there, it's not for that sort of thing. It's not for business. I'm not there to go shopping. I'm not there to find the next offer. If I happen to see that there's an offer, I might be in the grocery store line, or I might be, it's the end of the night and I'm tired and I'm just trying to
decompress,
unhook my brain right now and just see what everybody else is up to or something. And I'm not really in a buying mood. But when I'm checking my email, I'm doing that on purpose. I'm checking my email on purpose. When I'm listening to a podcast, I'm doing that on purpose. I'm probably washing my dishes. I'm on a walk. I'm folding my laundry. I'm doing something where I'm allowing myself to absorb this information, and I'm spending intimate time with that person listening. Same thing with a YouTube video or something like that.
It's much more intentional. It seems like it's much more intentional when they're reading something that you wrote or listening to something that you created. Yeah.
It's really just evergreen. When we publish something on social media, it has the average shelf life about 24 to 48 hours of relevancy. So when you have something really valuable to share, you can share it on social media, but know that if nobody sees it, or whatever interactions it's going to get are going to be in that first, day or two. And after that, it's not going to hold relevancy anymore. People aren't going to be seeing it, liking it, or interacting with it necessarily. But if you publish this on another medium, in another format that offers SEO, especially your podcast will allow SEO, a blog will allow SEO. Those things have a shelf life of a year to 5 years or more, depending on, the topic that you brought up, especially if it's coaching industry stuff. It's probably really human and it's not going to get outdated. Maybe you might change your mind, but the point is you can create content that has a long shelf life, that you're able to preserve it and also continue to reuse it. So that effort that you put in to create it in the first place, you can repeat the benefit of it, the value. You can continue just to grow in value, whereas the things that you post on Facebook or Instagram or even TikTok have diminishing returns over time.
Oh, that's really good information to have. And so, I'm a virtual coach. You work virtually. Do you have any advice for entrepreneurs who work virtually to acquire those virtual clients without being consumed by like constantly content creation. I'm getting inundated again with coaches. Content creation every day. You must post social media every day. And it's like, I can't. I'm a parent. I have a kid who was sick for like a week
Right.
from school. When am I supposed to be making content creation every day? No.
Well, my one piece of advice would be join Bay Society. It's a one-time fee to get in, and it's indefinite access, and it's a place for you to network. I have 4 R's, and it is reputation, referrals. Oh my gosh, what are my own 4 R's? I'm like, I'm going to get this wrong. I'm going to tell you correctly since this is being recorded.
And
I
I'm
was
a
just sharing
member.
about this in the group. So, relationships. Relationships, reputation, referrals, and repeat.
Nice.
Those are the things that grow your business. Relationships are the key to success. So 80% of the coaching industry they've reported that they get their clients word of mouth. 80% of the industry is gaining their new clients via word of mouth. And that's even including the people who are reporting that they do use social media. So about 45% of the coaching industry reports they use social media for business purposes. Of that 45%, 65% of those people say that it barely works or doesn't work at all for them. So that's where I came with that stat. A very slim margin of the coaching industry is able to successfully leverage it. And from my ops, I've had a couple of clients who've gone the social media route. I've primarily worked with people who want to grow their business and also have a personal life as well. The thing with social media as your primary growth strategy for your business, instead of what I believe it should be is a little sprinkle, is that it takes over your life and it becomes the product itself for your business. You have to work for Instagram. Have you seen The Social Network, the documentary that came out a couple years ago? Yeah. Okay. If for anybody's listening who hasn't seen this, go watch it and you will understand this so much better. But social media is algorithmically designed for that process. They want you to spend more time on it. Everything is set up to spend more time on there because there's advertisers on there. And other successful coaches who are using social media successfully to grow your business and are teaching you how to do it too. It's part of that. It's part of the, let's find users and more users because we are the product. So social media loves people like influencer coaches, influencer people, right? But I'd say most of the clients that most of the entrepreneurs I've met, I should say, not just my own clients, but just generally peers as well, don't really care or want to be an influencer. I personally do not. I enjoy my privacy. I enjoy my intimate relationships. I enjoy taking, quiet walks in my neighborhood. And I don't want to carry my phone and be like, I'm on this quiet walk in my neighborhood right now.
Right. Yeah.
Every once in a while, I like it documenting it, but I don't enjoy feeling any sort of obligation to document that. I don't need people to see what I'm doing in order to feel like it was worth it or it was fulfilling. Right. And I also know that it doesn't further my business. So I think that a lot of people believe unconsciously, because it's part of the how to do business programming, that they need to be doing this. They feel beholden to it, like it's a lot of work. And it's another full-time job that they're trying to add on top of their business that is so unnecessary.
So instead of oversharing or sharing a lot on social media, then, really putting into work some of the elements of building those relationships and getting the word of mouth referrals. Do you have any advice on how to get those word of mouth referrals a little more easily, readily?
Yeah, it depends on the specific scenario, but and you can tell me if this is what you're looking for in your question, but something that a lot of my clients have directly asked me about is they're like, someone told me that they think they know someone who would be a good fit for me. And they're like, so I gave them my phone number and I was like, tell them to call me. And I'm like, that's probably not going to work. This is a really specific just networking strategy that it's so simple, but it's very effective if you understand the psychology of it. If somebody tells you that they think they know someone who would be a good fit for the work you do, ask your friend, the person, the referee, ask them to send a personal group text between you and that person.
Yeah.
Not an
Make an
email.
introduction.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
be specific, not an email, because those are a little less personal, it's
Mhm.
easier to ignore an email.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to ignore a text. And also when we make these personal connections, like your friend knows that person personally, and they know you personally, but you and the referral person, you guys don't know each other yet. And for that to feel like a safe, connected connection, that middle party person needs to be present, at least in the handoff between you and that person. So give them a specific ask. If somebody says they know someone that would be a great fit for you, tell them that is so awesome. I appreciate you. Would you mind sending a group text between me and that person and introduce us, and I can take it from there?
That's a
And then do
great
that.
idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. My only additional thought to that is like, sometimes people don't actually ask for the referrals. Like sometimes they
Oh
don't
yeah.
tell their clients, I'm looking for people. Like I would love to help more people if you know of someone. So, what's a great way to put out there that we're actually looking for those referrals from people?
Talk about it like you just said. Talk about it, and maybe not from the place of like, I need new clients,
Mm-hmm.
but hey, I'm really enjoyed working with you. I bet other people who resonate with the type of work we did.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that comes to mind for you right now that you think would be a great fit for me? Ask them just to think of one person. Not like, hey,
Yeah.
if somebody, just so happens that it works out, like do it. Give them that specific ask. We are specific about asking for what we want. And this applies not just in business and referrals, but this is kind of a
Right.
universal
Let's
thing.
lay down like
Yeah.
the echoing resonant thing for life.
Yes, for life.
Ask for
Be
what you want.
specific in your asks. Ask for
Yeah.
what you want. Anytime
Yeah.
that we gamble, we know what happens when we gamble. We don't know exactly what we're going to get back. We're literally just throwing it out there to be like, whatever comes back, comes back.
Mhm.
But in these sorts of situations, there's something specific you're hoping to receive back. So tell the person, tell the person
Yeah.
what you're hoping for. Be upfront with your intentions and your desires, and you're far more likely to receive it. Ask and ye shall receive, they say.
Well, I think especially in like American culture towards women, like we were taught to be more implicit, to imply things instead of be bold and direct and
Oh yeah.
be explicit. So that's a whole life lesson, learning how to shift that communication dynamic and just what I can just say what I need and ask for what I want. Yes, you
Yes.
can.
And you don't
It's
have to just
highly
be quiet, be
encouraged.
seen and not heard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and you know, with, I would even go so far as to say, put all your cards on the table. Because if
Yeah.
it's not a good fit, you'd rather find that out sooner rather than later.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Transparency in business. And this is again part of the programming. We have this unconscious um, uh, acceptance that we need to create the veneer.
Mm.
We need to create the veneer. We need to create the mask. This is my business mask. And that's different than creating a beautiful and well communicated brand. I mean, I've been creating brands for over a decade now, so I definitely believe in being intentional and crafting that. Then there's this other thing where we feel like we have to posture something in order to
Yeah.
receive. And the posturing in order to receive is an internal gatekeeping process that you're like, I have to be like this, look like this, sound like this, come across this way, never say don't say like, whatever it is that you're gatekeeping for yourself in order to receive, is that you're going to create the truth in that. You will make that story true because you're telling it to yourself. And so you're going to be showing up in ways that will reinforce that story for you. So
Even pricing, wouldn't you say gatekeeping pricing because we're afraid people won't pay it or it'll be an instant turn off?
and
What are
then
your
you're going
thoughts
to
on
show
that?
up with the energy of that, and it's going to be true.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think that there's like a little subtlety, like it's maybe not the first thing that you see, and it's still involved with the lines of all the other things that you're putting out there. Like it's still
Yeah.
in there,
Yeah.
I think it was you. I had something that I was putting out and I was looking at my page and like the price was like right there, right in front.
Yeah.
And it was great. That was the way the platform worked. And I
Yes.
couldn't move the price, and it was not a great location for it. But at least it was out there and I was being bold with it, whatever.
Yeah, totally. It's funny, like, I think this is, well, you're not asking me this question, but it reminds me of this. A lot of people do think that there's like this perception that like the price, like something being cheaper or lesser, whatever, like that's going to get people to buy it. So if I lower my prices, I'm going to increase my sales. If I have the cheapest thing, I'll have more purchases. And the psychology of that doesn't actually add up or work that way. I have a feeling that's probably why the website, I remember this, your story. I totally remember that moment because I was like, really? It just does that? That's so dumb. It won't let you put it in like a context. Because what it ended up doing is through visual hierarchy, which is something I like to teach people since I have a design background. Visual hierarchy, it tells this story that the most important thing about your service was how much it cost.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not the most important thing about your service.
Well, and I appreciated your feedback on that for sure. I was really trying to figure out how to get that to change, but I moved on. I moved on to another.
Solve another problem. For another day.
So moving forward into creating new in the business world and specifically in the online business world, like what's your personal vision of that?
My personal vision is autonomous collaboration. You know, there's a program that we feel like we have this binary option. We either, every man for himself, I'm an entrepreneur now, we're a bunch of people who you know, we're so empowered and we're independent and we're foraging through the world and nobody owns us. We have our own schedule. So there's that option. And then there's the other option. I work for someone, I'm beholden. They tell me what my schedule is and they cap my income. And we're like, we don't want that. We want this, right? Well, that's not the only option. The thing about option number one that we all are like, we want this, is that it leaves us isolated. We're like on these little islands all by ourselves. We don't want to give up our sovereignty or our autonomy. And so we go into this extreme space. And really, it's another extreme on the other end of the spectrum is codependence, right? There is a middle ground, and that is our interdependent relationships with other people. So Bay Society is what I created in response to observing that there were these two really extreme binaries in everyone's perception, even in the past, my own perception of what was available to me if I want to feel like I'm connected with people, but not give up my personal power or give up my personal business. Like, how do I work with people and not for them? And also create a dynamic where people aren't only underneath me coming up to me or I'm employing them, right?
Right. Because
I did have a whole team in 2020 and I loved having collaborators. It was so much fun and we had really amazing synergy. At the end of 2020, I disbanded the group because I was like, I'm shouldering all of the, like, not just the responsibility, but the risk. You know, I'm distributing responsibilities, but I'm shouldering all the risk. Not everybody here, no one has equal ownership. The only person who has real ownership is me. And it really wasn't sustainable. And in a capitalistic society, it's really the model is you just have to pay people less to try to minimize your risk as a business owner. And I was just like, I don't feel great about this. And I love these people so deeply. I just can't keep this dynamic up long term. So I'm still really close with all the people I worked with. Some of them are now inside of Bay Society, actually. But I created Bay Society because this is an opportunity, and I'm not the first person to create something like this, but it's definitely still kind of fringe. There's not, it's something that I think a lot of people still need an explanation or like, how does that work? Like, how can that work? But, and I'm going to answer that question. I'm asking it out loud, so I better answer it. How does it work? There's three legs to Bay Society. So three main functions. Number one being a learning space. So once people get admission and they're inside the space, they're able to access resources. So trainings, micro trainings, content that is relevant for the work that they're doing, all the stuff I've been talking about. I should just summarize all the stuff I've been talking about. There are lessons around those subjects inside of Bay Society. There's also drop-in calls. So if you do need more help and you have questions, there is a drop-in call that you can just show up to, scheduled every month, where you can ask those questions and be like, hey, I took this training, you were talking about this thing, I'm trying to apply it, but I'm stuck here. So you have live support as well. And that is part of, I guess, the second function, which is community and having this collective wisdom space and a space for you to network. Again, your network is your net worth. So the people that you know and that you spend time with, you commune with, are going to determine the outcome of your life, not just your business, but of your life. So if you are hoping that your business has success, probably smart to connect with other people who care about you, who are also in the same pursuit and want to see you further as well as themselves, and want to share resources with you. So
I love that.
The aspect of it is huge.
The whole idea of interdependence is where it's at, really. I mean, even in the context of networking, you know, we develop those relationships, we sell through our networking partners, not to our networking partners. And they may buy, but that's not the point of it. And we mutually love and support each other. You know, this whole country has got this relationship with toxic independence, and it's a bootstrap, I'll do it myself, I'm independent, you better do it on your own kind of mentality. But really, we're these creatures that grew up all huddled together in a cave trying to help each other survive. Yeah. And so, right? So yeah. It's like, let's just drop the cowboy, because that's not sustainable, it's not functional, not healthy. And let's call in each other. You know, even if we've been hurt in the past, doesn't mean we're going to get hurt again. You know, let's be bold, let's be brave, let's be discerning, but let's be interdependent and supportive of each other.
Yes, these values are things that I've held for a long time. And I think the thing that we're all looking for is containers to hold our values. And because we live in this capitalistic society, it's hard to see what it could look like to have a container that would hold all of that.
Right.
And, you know, so the third function of Bay Society is the autonomous collaboration model that I thought I developed after some research. I'm like, okay, I was not the first person who thought of this, but I thought I was for like a week. But the autonomous collaboration model is that other contributors, I'm not the only person serving this community, and that there are a multitude of ways. So right now, there's a few ways that you could be a contributor inside Bay Society. You can be a community mentor. You can create side quests, which are paid opportunities, and you can also work on a summit team. So we are producing summits as a group. You participate inside of this, and it's equal profit sharing. So if you are a part of a community operation, we build something, we offer it to people, they buy it. We split the profits evenly, which profits is after our expenses, obviously, right, with those of us who worked on it, who are on that team. So there are ways to make money as a Bay Society member, but it's not the primary function of being there, but it is an option. If you want to give back to the community and give back to the world, you can work with the people here, people that like you, know you, trust you, want to do things with you. And that's something I think we don't have very many avenues to do something like that as of right now. You know, I've been looking and waiting and wanting something like this, and finally got to that point. I finally got to that point where I was like, I think I just have to create it. If I want this, I'm going to have to make it happen. And I think that's probably one of the things that sets most entrepreneurs apart, is that we're out there, we're like, I'm seeing what I want. I'm seeing what I want in the world. And maybe you've spent some time waiting for your, you know, to find it. And you finally get to that moment where you're like, I just have to make it happen.
Right. Yeah. At some point,
exercise my power.
I got to step up. Yeah. Yeah.
It's leadership. You have to go first, you know, you have to prove it. You have to show that it's possible. Somebody from the last, I did a masterclass series in September, and someone who took the masterclass series, I loved what she said at the end. She was like, I feel like you proved to me that the 4-minute mile was possible for the first time. Nice. Which, if you understand the reference, for anybody who doesn't know that reference, the 4-minute mile was something that was like an enigma for people for a long time. And then someone broke the 4-minute mile. And then after that, like 10 more people did it in the same year. You know, when we
The
have
glass ceiling.
expanders around what's possible,
Yeah.
we start to take up space that we didn't even know was possible for us to take up, and to create things that we've never seen before. You know, Bay Society is my personal playground in a lot of ways. It's a place for me to have fun with the work that I do and share the passions that I have. And that's something I've helped other people create as well. Business playgrounds are a very legitimate and necessary way for us to sustainably show up for our business, because when we're not feeling aligned or happy or excited or enthused by what we're doing, it's a drudge. It's like you literally just created a new bird cage from yourself. You went from the job and you created a new job where you're stuck inside of it.
Yeah.
And we're so programmed to just move to what's familiar. And so a lot of people leave jobs, they leave the corporate world, they leave that sort of thing. And they're like, the only models that they know are the ones that they've seen that they didn't like being inside of in the first place. And so they're like, oh, maybe if I just move myself to the top, it'll be easier at the top. And it's lonely there. Let me tell you, it's actually lonelier there. You know, at least when you had coworkers, you had people that could commiserate with you and relate to you. When you're the business owner and you're shouldering all this responsibility, you don't have anyone to do that with unless you hire mentorship, or you're an observer on a really chaotic Facebook group, or, you know, there's not that many really great options out there. Oh, I thought that we were going to get through this whole thing without my cat.
That's okay, because this is real life.
Yeah.
This is real life. This is what being an entrepreneur from home looks like.
Yes. Huff is a very important part of my business.
That's the CEO right there.
Yeah, she's the real CEO. You are the real deal, aren't you?
The cat executive officer. So it's all about relationships. It's all about having that container. It's all about forging your own path, minimizing the noise that we listen to on a regular basis. Any other final thoughts or words of wisdom for the entrepreneurs at home?
Find your grounded space in your body. Success so we often think about nervous system dysregulation and dysregulation in general being from trauma and stress, right? Like bad things. And I've been doing this for a while now, and I can tell you that that's not really it. It's change. Our nervous system is stretched by change. So change can be a good thing, you know, like if you've ever moved to your dream home or had the child that you've been waiting for, you probably know how, or had a wedding to your, you know, the love of your life. Those are stressful events. Actually, they're really dysregulating for the nervous system because it's change based. And the same applies to business. I had a client years ago who made 10 grand in the first 3 weeks of working together after she'd been used to making like $1,500 a month or maybe $2,000 a month. So she like 10x'd her income just by changing her business model. And I was so happy for her and excited for her. And we had so much regulation to move through after that. It was massive dysregulation because it was not something that she was prepared for. She was like, oh my gosh, I'm questioning, I'm not sure. And I've seen this happen. I've had it happen to me. I've seen it happen with other people, that we have a success, and the success, one, it doesn't bring you what you think it will be most of the time. A lot of people are still, they're like, oh, I'm on my self-love journey. And I'm like, you're still trying to prove that you're lovable by accomplishing things. And you make the money, you hit the goal or whatever it is, and you're still the same person, and you still feel like, afterwards. And that's unfulfilling. And your nervous system is like, we just did all this stuff. What's going on? Everything's different. Like you get a lot of clients, you make a lot of money, whatever the change is, it's going to cause dysregulation, most likely. You know, even sharing something vulnerable on social media can be very dysregulating for you. And having a practice of nervous system regulation, even having just education on what nervous system regulation looks like, allows you to stay mentally and physically healthy on the journey. And that is, to me, that is the master key. So earlier I said social media is not the master key. My opinion is that this is the master key to growth in your business. Is you've got to be able to have the capacity. And so nervous system flexibility increases your capacity to tolerate change and to tolerate change in a way that is going to allow you to show up for it, you know? that I think is easier said than done for sure. I developed my own framework to support people through this after my years of, my own struggles and supporting people and training.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've gone through, or you were at the master class, that's right, in September. So you
Yeah,
probably, you remember
did
the
some
6
of it.
phases of somatic alchemy. It is
Yeah.
a self-led somatic process that really I think it's something that's just missing from the bigger conversation. There's so many people out there creating amazing content around somatic regulation, but most of it feels like awareness that you need to be doing it, or it's specific exercises that will help you dispel things from the nervous system, but it's not how to move yourself to a full process of discovering what your new truth is, which is,
Yeah.
a lot
The
of
next
mostly,
step.
yeah, what's the
Yeah.
next step? Where am I going? Coaching is
Mhm.
really about future you and you expanding and revealing who you truly are underneath. I think authenticity is not something that we become, it's something that we uncover. We
Agreed.
our healing is a revealing process,
Mhm.
and we don't have I have not seen a very clear system that gives the power back to the person and doesn't hold it with just the practitioner. Like I would have to normally go to a practitioner to move through these somatic processes.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, yeah, you do. We need other people. We need support in a different steps. There's indication on when it's appropriate for you to be bringing someone else in. But having mentors, having a therapist, having etc. is important. And you're still in charge. You're
This
still
is
in charge
such,
of this journey.
yeah, such an
You know?
important conversation right now because we all want more money, we all want more clients, we all want to grow and get bigger. And each time we face that edge, that's sets off the nervous system each time. Like you said, when we
Yeah.
have a vulnerable share on Facebook or something like that, like each time. And then if you have a layer of trauma underneath it or some other kind of life stressor, then you're stacking stress in your nervous system, which
Yeah.
fires up more easily and more readily. And it's like it takes a little bit more to get to a clear slate.
Yeah.
So I love that you're bringing this up because I think so many people don't have any awareness around nervous system and how it impacts our growth and how it impacts our business and how it impacts our wealth and success. So
Oh,
thank you
yeah.
for bringing that.
All the emphasis on mindset work is often kind of a misnomer.
Mhm.
Um, it is awesome to reframe things, but simply reframing them doesn't somatically change it for you. And if and you end up literally gaslighting yourself. If you create a new affirmation, you're like, oh, I'm just going to say this is not true anymore because this is more true. But if you don't have that integrated and imprinted on your nervous system as true, you're stepping into that cognitive dissonance space, which is going to throw you off and create dysregulation, no matter how helpful that thought actually is. So the 6
Yeah.
phases are to help you integrate the new things that you're bringing in so you can increase that nervous system flexibility, which obviously gets easier over time. There's that exponential growth factor that happens.
Yeah.
Like we practice something, we get better and better and better and better at it. And at some point, it's like the hockey stick moment on the graph, the growth chart, where you're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
whoa, when did I get here?
Right.
Like, wow, my proficiency level is so high. But in the beginning, it's just putting in the everyday work.
Yeah. Fantastic. I know for myself personally, I've been on a huge growth cycle with, I used to be really into affirmations and like finding ways to anchor those and embody those and feel those on a somatic level and then allow my nervous system to create space for those is a whole other ballgame.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
so I appreciate you saying that because like affirmations are great, but
They
let's
are.
let's let's bring those lessons into the body. Let's how can we create awareness for that affirmation within this physical being?
I think it's just a matter of understanding the context of affirmation and when it really is, uh, when it's, I don't want to say appropriate, but like when the timing of utilizing it is going to be effective for you.
Yeah, when it's accessible
Mm-hmm.
within you. Yeah. Because I mean, I can lie to myself for years and about an affirmation, and it won't
Oh,
make any
totally.
difference until like, oh, something clicks energetically, emotionally, physically, and oh, okay, we created space for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome.
I just shared this with my Bay Society community last night. So right now we're focusing each month on my cat's loving this right now on on one of the phases of somatic alchemy that I teach. And the first phase is sensory attention. And it's really just befriending and connecting with the body and your physical experience. So I'm happy to share what the December's challenge is with whoever is listening right now.
Oh yeah, that's great. Go for it.
So we're doing a 5-5-5 challenge. So 5-5-5 is 5 minutes, 5 senses, full body, 5 days a week. So it's a practice. So the intention of the practice is to get better at being in the body and observing and literally noticing what's happening. A lot of people skip this step and they want to go straight to the affirmation, which is really like step 7 on my somatic alchemy list. I mean, I don't call it affirmations, but it falls under that category. So it's way down the list. The first thing that we really need is to feel physically present within ourselves and to be embodied and alive in our physical unit without all of the chatter or the mental ideas or the labeling. And that sounds easy, and yet most of us aren't doing it. We're not doing it on a regular basis. Even when we go to yoga class, you might not really be embodied. You're thinking about something else. You're performing for the person who can see you behind you or what the instructor thinks of you, etc. You have a commentary going on.
Right.
So the 5 minutes, you can do it standing, you can do it seated, you can do it lying down, you can have eyes open, eyes closed, it doesn't matter. But it's becoming hyper present for only 5 minutes. You know, it's not a tall order. It's simple, but it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, to be present with ourselves, just noticing what's happening in the body, noticing noticing your sensations, the subtle ones, the energetic. Sometimes there's like really subtle things that are going on that we're not aware of until we get quiet enough to pay attention. So
I think that that's a beautiful note to kind of like send people off with. Like, I would love for anyone listening right now to just take the 5 minutes right now at the end of this video and just notice what's going on in your body. What are you experiencing? What do you see, hear, smell, taste, feel? What subtle currents, maybe? What subtle senses you're experiencing? I would love for everyone to experience that right now.
Thank you for prompting that, Michelle.
So much. Thank you. No, it was wonderful.
I felt it in my body when you said it.
Right? Yeah. Part of the magic.
Yeah.
Thank you, dear heart, for sharing so much. And my guest, Eve Hart, is a multi-dimensional practitioner. She has practiced spiritual and healing work for over 20 years. She's the founder of the 40-Day Green Cleanse. She has personally helped heal her own body through Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue, depression, and stage 4 cancer. And she's going to share a bit of her story and also to talk about how we can activate our chakras and how we can support our healing journeys through cleansing. Welcome, Eve.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your healing journey.
It all started when I was, the story goes, I was born into a family where there was a lot of trauma and drama. And at 4, I closed my heart. I was ill a lot, and my mom thought I might die. Maybe I did have some near-death experiences, actually.
Wow.
And until 19, so it was very up and down, as a psychic being and also very empathic and just sensitive overall. I closed my heart at 4. And then at 19, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, chronic depression, mono, and they said I'd be medicated for life. And they gave me a couple pills, and I said, this is not the way I want to go. This was my mom's way. And I never knew her to be well a day in her life. And the body can heal. I believe in that. So I feel that was like the wake-up call. I stepped up into my life in a new way, called a healer. We did a 30-day cleanse. It was very, um, it was one of those rigid ones. It was very, very strict.
Mm.
But I also did emotional work, some forgiveness, and that combination, I felt like I woke up for the first time in my life, in my body at 19, and the effects of all that really stayed with me. I had her as a mentor. I started, that was my awakening into healing and
Wow.
my
That's
dedication
a
into
young age.
that. That's about 1992, 3, somewhere like that, where I had my wake-up call. And not many people around me understood the language. Um, there's a lot that's happened, in those years. And for me to start my healing for myself and with others. And then I just started doing groups and loved the energy of groups, cleansing in groups, healing in groups, women's stuff, obviously. You met me during one of our Drum for Love. It
Mhm.
was an 11-hour ceremony and celebration that day. And it took me through, I would go back to where my son was born. Had a great pregnancy, and at the end, my body just didn't feel like my body. And through the years, I would go in these dips, and then I would finally figure it out, okay, go back on a cleanse, do some healing. We're going to get out of this.
Mhm.
And it was a really tough one after the birth of my son. But I started uh trying to pack in all the things I needed to cleanse when my body just didn't want to do it. We have superpowers when we're pregnant. We have so much intuition,
Yeah.
so much direction. And so I just started, sitting with my body. What does my body need and what does it want? And so someone said, green food really helps. This Yogi Bhajan does something with the green foods, and I started looking up his recommendation, but it's pretty much green food. And I started putting on all the years that I did with my clients and myself. I started putting together everything I knew, and I just started experimenting with green food, and it really started working out. But what I added was gentleness, and I added love, and I added respect for my body. My body didn't want all the things that I used to do for cleansing before pregnancy. It wanted gentleness, it wanted ease, it didn't want to go gung ho,
Yeah. As a mother,
where
that makes
maybe,
sense to me. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
nourishing, gentle. And uh, when, as a coach and working with inner child healing, that's the worst thing you could do is put somebody on a cleanse that doesn't want to be on it. Part of themselves
Mm.
doesn't want to be on it. And at the end, they're just going to rebel. So I put this together and became very successful. I figured I got myself out of that emotional, spiritual funk, but it wasn't till a little later when my cleanse grew to about 100 people,
Wow.
where from one day to the next, I had people at the stores. You changed my life. My children followed too. Everybody shifted the way they eat. And it's a segue into more spiritual healing, this type of cleanse, because I I implement the spiritual, purification, the first quadrant, second quadrant, mindfulness, third quadrant, embodiment, and the last one is self-love. And for one day to the next, I was in this dark closet, literally felt like I was pushed back in the world or excluded from the tribe. And all spirit told me was look back for when you were 19, look to 19, look back to 19. And it was like somebody took my brain, scrambled it up, and it had no connection to spirit, except I did because I got these trickles of messages. So I went
Mhm.
into my healing room and then started asking, what is this? Please tell me what this is. I'm like, all of a sudden, health walking around the city, and now I'm not health. I don't even want to show my face. I can't cook for myself. I can't walk around the block.
Mm,
It's I feel like a fraud, all these
yeah.
things was, coming up for me, and I didn't know how to do it. I usually always got myself out of it. So I just started really asking loudly. I heard it was specific supplements. I heard it was like, what you needed, emotions, but more, even though I had done coaching and healing and did people worked with clients one-on-one online, I knew I didn't have this tool. I didn't have the tools to go that deep, that far, because it was um, the generational healing that I didn't have the tools to maybe do. I did shamanic practices and everything. And so I was just, okay, tell me where to go. Saw someone's face, asked her. She worked with the Theta healer. That's when I got started, getting trained in Theta healing. And the other thing was the medical medium book. So that's where the specific, I didn't do all of his stuff, but I took what I needed, But the first page of his book was my life on the mystery illnesses page. And I realized how many people actually have Epstein-Barr virus, because that's what finally I found out, not only what I had, but what my mom gave me. So she actually died of over medication right
Mm,
around that time where I felt that disconnect. It was all this, culminating. Business grew so fast. My mom's ending up in the hospital, almost dying. And then the stress of everything.
yeah.
Even if I was eating great, you could lick my floors. I have no chemicals. I don't wash my clothes with chemicals. I don't wear perfumes. I'm clean. I eat organic. I do yoga. I meditate. I live that life, but I had stress that came out of nowhere, and that's the opportunist Epstein-Barr virus. So
Interesting.
I'm so happy that I found the name of that
Yeah.
virus. But immediately after, I got Lyme disease. So I had both. It was both of them can take your life. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
They attack in similar
And
ways, it seems like they both like do zap your energy. They both like uh, affect your immune system. It seems like there's some similarities between the two.
there are, except under a microscope. If you go get your blood pricked and you look under a microscope, you can actually see Lyme disease and it spikes moving in your body, and it is really, really painful. It is,
Mm,
I would sit with friends and just stare off into them because I would start a few sentences and not know what I was talking about. I had no recollection. I couldn't eat, I was in bed with so much pain and not really knowing, well, what do I do? There's so much that I do. And for someone else that didn't have the lifestyle I did, they would just do what I would do probably to help
right.
themselves. But I was already there. Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
so I really had to pray louder, have more faith, and work on uh I did the generational, the ancestral healing. So in Theta healing, they work on 4 levels of beliefs. The core belief system, which is what a therapist works on, your collective beliefs or your past life beliefs, things that are coming at you from the internet or the news. We also work on the soul, the trauma or different things our heart may hold, soul
Mm,
belief systems, and also ancestral, the DNA, what we inherit. And it could be generations and generations of inheritance of belief systems that we're operating with 95% beliefs. And so that was so fascinating to me. The first day I started, you know, seeing healing. And so I knew this was going to be my tool. I now am a master teacher. I help certify healers in that realm. And
mm,
I was able to heal instantly and see instant healings, but not for everything. So I was able to start my healing with Lyme and Epstein-Barr. But when we talk about, my friend the other day, she said, well, I just want to, I believe in miracles. I believe in instant healings like you. I've seen you go through instant healings. I said, yeah, but I haven't, not all the time.
Yeah.
There's been instances where I see this for myself or others, and there's a lot of times where we need to believe that everything that we came into our life, we've contracted. We've contracted that divorce, we've contracted that illness, we've contracted all these experiences for us to learn. It's a teacher. And yeah, I was used to healing so fast. And when these things came along, they broke me down to another level, but I was able to expand my career. And I also studied in medical intuition, which when I saw people sitting in front of me, I scanned their bodies and I was like, wow, there's so much Epstein-Barr out there in this world. Almost everybody I knew had it. But when I would talk about it, it was like, no, it didn't stick. Like it was something like my mouth was moving and they weren't getting, they didn't want to hear it somehow. It was very interesting. It was almost like, no, that doesn't exist, but I'm still having pain. I'm still having, it expresses in hundreds of different ways. That's why I never really got, all my life, it looked different, but it was the same root. It was the same root. And I feel a lot of that root of a lot of viruses and illnesses are emotional. And there's a lot of physical things that came with that too, that might not be tied into emotion. But I'm glad I found that out, because when I got diagnosed with cancer, I knew at that moment that cancer was part of what came through, because my immune system all my life wasn't working for me to guard me from that. And I developed a clogged milk duct after my son's birth. But the doctor said, don't worry, that's just normal. It'll get harder and bigger, and don't worry. And it did. So I went a couple years and it got harder, it got bigger. And then later they discovered cancer. And I knew not to do I think I went to 8 or 9 doctors, like conventional doctors. After I did Mexico, I did a lumpectomy, it was gone, and then it came back. It's an estrogen fed cancer, so any stress actually was feeding cancer. So imagine living with cancer and not being stressed. I mean, there's this what the most stressful part is, what do I do if I'm not going to do what they want me to do? And there's 9 of them wanting me to do the same exact treatment or I will die. So imagine that lingering. You will die unless you do what I'm telling you. And that was a big lesson for me, because I always had the uncertainty of the white coat in my background, because I saw what it did to my mom.
Sure.
That's why I chose the natural lifestyle and the archetype of the healer. I'm going to do it on my own. I don't need you attitude. So when I went to Mexico, it was warm. It was fuzzy. It's different than here. They'll hold up a cross and cry for you,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which happened once when I had a reaction to something they gave me. I had 4 nurses and they were, I'm not Catholic or I'm not religious, but they were, praying to God with their crosses and literally touching you and having an experience with you. And that was wonderful. I feel like I went around the world and back to understand cancer at a very high cost financially, because I'm very curious on, wonder if this works, wonder if that works, but also the type of cancer that I was going through. things would work for a minute and then it would pivot.
Seemed to
Yeah,
be
all that.
experiential.
Yeah, spending
Yeah.
400, 500 to 1200 a week sometimes to
Wow.
experience and experiment on certain natural things. And then all of a sudden it's not working. I have to, those weeks of not knowing what to do, it was all about prayer. It was all about, give me the next thing, please. And everybody and your mom, was emailing you, texting you, calling you, leaving you Facebook messages, Instagram messages. I know how to heal cancer. My friend healed it through eating bananas or whatever. It was like
Yeah.
always something new
Yeah.
and different. And it was really eye-opening
Hmm.
because even the Facebook groups, if you did chemotherapy, you weren't allowed to talk about natural healing on the groups that you were healing naturally. You weren't allowed to mention chemotherapy. And so I'm like, where is the middle? Where in
Yeah.
this world can we accept both ways and just be honest about what we want to put into our healing path without being criticized and judged?
Yeah.
And so I saw the world so incredibly insane, which I was glad because then COVID came and it was the same thing.
It was just more the same, wasn't it? Yeah.
More the same. When it hit, I was like, yeah, try cancer instead. When it really is just happening to you and nobody else, it's much more terrifying than when COVID's happening, you're at least sharing it with the world. When you're going through cancer, it's an journey that no one can understand. They could try to understand, even if maybe they've had cancer too. It's a different kind of cancer. Maybe they went a different route. They have different people around them. It's so different. And um, I just started seeing this polarity, right? And I actually started integrating a little bit of, well, I had my lumpectomy, I did a mastectomy, I did some estrogen blocking pills, and then a hysterectomy. And it was really intense for me. It was like being run over by a truck and flattened out and then run over again. With the estrogen going into menopause really quickly, shifting your endocrine system like that. I knew that there was better ways. With all the healing that I was doing, I did heal. I feel like I'm able to live this long. That's a miracle. I have been able to do it with, they think I should still be on drugs for the rest of my life. I did it for a very short time, felt the um the miracle of whatever I was doing and all the natural things, including um medical marijuana suppositories at high doses. I think that was like a really cool ticket for a very short time. And then, leaving the conventional and even leaving the THC behind, just choosing and completely navigating kind of on my own. But they did give me a bone strengthening drug when I hit a stage 4. And I was happy. They didn't bug me with chemotherapy anymore. I was like, good, get off my back. I'm not doing it. And my bones were literally breaking my jaw. You could touch my jaw. I could hear it crunching from that. I think I only got 3 shots once every month for 3 months. By that time, when I was on, conventional, I was tired. I was so tired. And I realized now it was normal bones. Now I had osteoporosis worse than an 80-year-old times 3, and your little block, any little fall could break my neck or my spine or my hips. It was the most terrifying, I think, out of everything. So I promised I said, God, please heal this because I just want to snowboard with my son. At that time, he was 7 or 8. That was last year. And it was within a meditation. And I would, meditate. I work with master teachers. We work with, certain alchemical elements, of course, always with creator. And in a flash, I remember, I kept this meditation. I was really instructed by the teachers. And right when I was going to get a PET scan, right before bone density test, I was sitting in the chair. I thought about, let's do that meditation again. And I saw this flash. It was so different than the other times. And they said, yeah, you're normal. You're actually better than when you started. And I said, isn't that funny? Like just a few months and I'm went from the worst to normal. Don't you
Wow.
think that's miracle healing? They said, well, yeah, that never happens. And I remember them trying to send me to everybody and every doctor to want to get me back on that same drug that was breaking my bones. And I kept asking them, how do you heal osteoporosis, even to women going through menopause? They all said the same thing. There is no way to heal. And so these little huge miracle healings, I was able to snowboard with my son that year, last year,
Wow.
right after that. And well, I wasn't going to go every day, of course. I just wanted to prove my point.
You've gone through one health transformation after another, after another, after another.
Yeah, a
And
lot.
it's interesting, like that you already had, well, because of when you were 19, you had this very set kind of like, I want to do natural healing as much as possible. I'm going to find ways to do this. I'm going to do cleansing. And that has deepened and deepened and deepened. And now it's cleansing and ancestral healing, which
Mhm.
not not a lot of people, I think, in the wellness community would think, well, we do one and we do the other, but we don't necessarily, like, I don't know that I've ever heard of anyone doing them at the same time. It's a part of the natural process that they're holding hands in the journey. And I love that you're doing that because it's like it brings a new it's like a new doorway has opened when you're combining those two. So that's pretty exciting for me. I love doorways.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
They're all rites of passages. I knew
yeah.
when I was a little girl that I would not repeat the patterns of my mother and I wouldn't repeat the negativity. I didn't want to have children if I didn't, clear that up. So I already knew I was going to be doing ancestral work. I just didn't know what that would look like. And it's been profoundly, you know, uh, I remember I'm not the healer. I'm just the conductor of I'm there to hold the space. I'm there to say the right words for that person. But there was a course I was teaching, Theta Healing, the basic one. I teach about 16 of them, but I was doing the basic course and the students were practicing. And I heard for one person, don't let the student work on her. She had 6 strains of Lyme disease.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and her son was killed by the police. So she was a very powerful healer and medium and spiritual teacher that blocked her gifts for 2 years for healing. She was healing trauma.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, we're gonna just do you as an example. I'll do the, I'll use you as an experiment or a demonstration of what theta
Yeah.
healing is at a very basic level. So it probably was a 25 minute, if that, healing. And she went into places she's never spoken about. And afterwards, I saw her doing her thing and her receiving messages again and feeling better. And she said, I really feel better. And she kept tapping on my shoulder. I feel, I feel better. I don't know how to say. I just feel like everything shifted. Usually, I wasn't surprised until she kept tapping me. She's like a mentor to me as
Hmm.
well.
That's
And when she
beautiful.
came back to class, I said, well, can you go back to the same test and ask, them to take it again just to see what shifted? And I asked everybody to scan her body to see how you know, we had done her scan before the healing and then after in the morning the next day before we got the test results. She was able to use the bathroom normally. She slept normally. She had her gifts back. It was like she was online again. And people were noticing the difference. It
Oh,
was an amazing testimony. That was an amazing, demonstration as well to see a shift like that. And the test results came in, you don't have any more Lyme disease. So the power of working with emotion or anything that's been stuck generations back, or it could be in this lifetime, maybe having to do with something that we weren't able to release, has a lot to do with it could be anything emotional, mental, physical
our
health.
physical. Yeah, yeah. So for people that are kind of new to this understanding, this way of being, what would you recommend if they're experiencing an imbalance in their body, if they're having some kind of chronic issue, or even an acute one, what's a good starting point for them as far as like resources or tools or just something they can do at home?
Okay, so those chronic things, I would go to specialists to see, pull a special panel, which costs money. Unfortunately, not everybody has good insurance. It's a
Yeah.
lot of money to do. Um, I've also used medical and, intuitives to help. We can't always be our own best healer, but we are our own best healer. We also can't do this alone. And
Yeah.
so, but that also costs money, all these things. I recommend going on, um, I recommend going to your source. The first thing, if you don't have a meditation practice, go within and ask for help and then get guided to where you need to go to. And that's what I like to tell people. There's a million things that I could share with you on how to heal, but that might not be for you unless we work together or you are accessing this information. You want to get to, if you go to, when I go to get regular blood work done, it's only very limited. This is like the average on an unhealthy population. But if you
Mm,
go to a specialist, they're going to tell you a better range for health. What my passion is getting people online for their purpose and passion, awakening their sense of true self and getting in touch with their own inner knowledge, with their own inner connection to their source. No matter where people are, everybody's on their healing journey, especially during this time in existence.
yeah.
Some people are just more aware of it than others, but the planet is going through transitional energetic shifts, and some of us are able to receive those much more than others. And everything is an opportunity, no matter where you are at. I have so many healers come to me and say, please don't tell anyone that I'm going through an illness or cancer or any, there people are a
Oh,
little shy about being a
yeah.
healer and going through their own breakdowns. It occurs at different, some people may not have anything to do with their bodies, like my husband, but some people may have things, financial breakdowns, or maybe it's relational, or, so everybody has their own stuff, no matter where you're
Yeah.
at.
Yeah.
Um, and so really working with our energetic, because when we hold emotions, stored emotions, if it's for ourselves or our ancestors, and they haven't gone through their own emotional stuff from an abortion, from a loss, from a death, and then we inherit that, it's significant. And people don't understand how significant that could be. So for a whole year, I was working with uh, women and very few men, but everybody I got in that year, what I saw was if they wanted success, if they wanted health, they wanted their divine lover to come in, whatever they were
Mm-hmm.
working on,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they just wanted spiritual growth. I always went to, you had an abortion, miscarriage, or loss of a child, or maybe their mom or grandmother or great grandmother. It was either in the lineage or it was with them, and they did not resolve it, even if they wanted it. They felt completely okay with an
Mm,
abortion or a
mhm,
miscarriage, but the soul wasn't okay with it yet.
mm,
The soul didn't go through its stages yet. Same thing with anybody that's passed away. If we're grieving and we feel like we don't want to let that soul go, we can actually keep them in this limbo
mm,
and they're not able to pass into the light. And so I was working with the shamanic practices that I knew, just guided until I worked with Theta. And so this is an example of one small piece of what somebody can come in for healing with. Like they're not even aware that something like an abortion or miscarriage, loss of a child, death of a sister, brother, even loss of, whatever it is, that trauma can actually impact our growth moving forward if we don't go back and work it through, work it out, even if it's not ours, even if it's our mother's or
mm.
grandmother's. We're more conscious than they are. Every child that is born, that is the intention to evolve humanity. The children that we have are meant for, you know, if we can't do it, they're going to do it. That's all about evolution.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling like, oh, why do we have to do it? I just shared the other day, it's really important to look at alcoholics and addicts, drug addicts, whatever addiction out there in the world. It could be pharmaceutical addiction. It's really important to see that they might be the most empathic beings in the family system, in the
Mm,
family, because they are not able to cope with the energy, the emotions that their mom had and couldn't, digest it all, either through a loss, especially loss of child, abortion, miscarriage, or even their grandmother, and it keeps on moving through, and they experience survivor's guilt. In other words, why do I need to exist? I don't exist. Why am I living? Having a lot of
interesting.
children dressed in black, or maybe they just feel like the outcasts, kind of the shadow of the family, and leads to alcoholism, addiction.
Yeah, I can see that sensitive people, you know, empathic and stuff like that. I can see those people feeling like the black sheep and feeling um, somewhat ostracized by society or their family unit, and using those negative coping skills, those coping mechanisms to like deal with the emotions and energy in the people around them. I can totally see that.
Yes, and it's by seeing the same thing reoccur that I, my own noticing with different healing modalities, and really having that compassion for what they might be going through and not understanding it. Sometimes if we can't understand it, we don't know how to resolve it. My mom, suffering all her life through all her pain, what it was Epstein-Barr. The doctor told her it was all these other things, diabetes, it was, depression, it was all the different diagnoses over her whole life with new drugs and new drugs and new drugs, but never gotten to the root, dying of over medication. And, she just didn't know.
Yeah.
She didn't have the tools. She didn't have the awareness. We now have the internet. We have a discussion that never was discussed before the medical medium came out with mystery illnesses. I know there's fanatics out there for medical medium who've healed their way. I'm also just, yes, there's so many ways of heal. There are so many ways to heal. I know someone who healed their
Oh,
cancer through eating meat, you know,
so
just an
interesting.
all meat diet.
But you have to choose what works for you. You have to be willing to be a little experimental and tap into what you really feel resonates within your being. Is that's what I'm hearing you say, like turning inside instead of listening to all the voices out here, like maybe listen a little bit and but really listen to hear.
And that's difficult to do when you've been in fight or flight all your life.
Yeah.
And there is no there because your mind can't go there yet. And so knowing just go with whoever feels right to help you on that path so you can access that truth. Healing happens in coherence, meaning get out of the fight or flight, and the higher mind and heart, when it's in sync, that's when the body repairs itself. And slowing down, which is a big blessing because the slowing down part was never easy for me. So being able to have to slow down in this way, and really being the first of your generation, either you're a healer or not healer, to learn to love yourself. There's no path given. There's no path laid out in front of you. You have to make your own way to learn to, how do you work with being an empathic in this crazy world? There's nobody leading that, the path where most healers, especially in my family, and the old ways of healing are in the sacrifice realms. They're not in this empowered realm. And so all these new healers taking on their past sacrifice, or we're giving of ourselves to heal someone, or we're the healer but not the creator. These are all programs they might not even know they carry. That's the great thing about the subconscious. We don't even know that we're carrying these programs out into the world. So once we start removing them, replacing them, we have more clarity, we have more intuition, we have more ground, we are able to connect to our hearts a little bit more. That's why I like to integrate into my work. And cleansing actually helps because when we're working with food and we're, well, maybe you just want to work on the basic levels, take out gluten, take out sugars, take out alcohols and things like that. And you are left without the comfort foods, the cakes and the crunchies and the carbs and all the things that you would to soothe your emotions. Now you have to be with your emotions. And within a group forum, we're able to cry about it, share about it, be able to see what's up for us. And I don't care how tenderized a healer is or a person, first time cleanser. Every time you dedicate to a program and yourself, the energy is so different. Some people would do my cleanses, either the 40-day green cleanse. That's the one that is more of an introductory, but people could be more seasoned and still have their breakthroughs. They would join 5 times a year sometimes, and every time it would look different. They get to choose what levels they want. Right now, I'll feel like a little bit more, feeling like I can do more than before. Maybe they want to do a more gentle one. I just don't want to take it to a level where I'm taking everything away and having to do too much. And that's where the Rainbow Awakening program came in, is, as I'm refining my own self, seeing these beautiful people changing their life in front of me, what wanted to happen was a program to support all these people on a different level that wanted to go even further. That's my bigger, passion, is let's go deep within the group. It's so much fun I know it's hard work, but it's fun
it's
too.
better to get support. We're so conditioned by society in this toxic individualism and bootstrap, and I got to do it myself, but to be able to just surrender and allow yourself to not only support others but be supported in your journey is huge. For some people don't even know how to do that. So I love that you're doing this stuff in the groups, because like you said, we all have some kind of something that we're experiencing. I wouldn't want people to think that they have to go it alone or keep it quiet into themselves and put on the little shame box because I'm in an experience, right? But to be able to have a facilitator and have comrades, to share in that process that makes it even more transformational, I believe.
Yes, and we sometimes don't know what we're going to show up with. You know, we might make it to a call,
Mhm.
and we might not understand, oh, the whole week just went by. I have really nothing to share. And then you're on the call and everything comes out. Because
Mhm.
sometimes we don't give ourselves an hour just to process the week, process what we're experiencing emotionally, mentally, and being held by others that are going through the same thing. You're able to feel seen and heard. And, you know, as adults, it's interesting how many of us really resist that, especially after COVID. Um, Really, the first program I did, a Rainbow Awakening program that I did after COVID, um, the sensitivities were so incredibly high. The Zoom, you know, meeting didn't work and they weren't able to talk or be heard. And that really triggered a
Wow.
lot of
Yeah.
insecurities again, not being heard, not being, some cameras weren't working. And it always is like that, right? The technology was actually assisting our processes and
Pulling out those triggers right away. Like,
pulling
let's
those
just take care of them
triggers
now.
for first 5 minutes. And you know, even as adults, we have those insecurities of, I don't care if you're a president of a company and they, you know, people could show up and you could be speaking all day long, very influential, but when it comes to emotions, and being seen in that way, we need
Yeah.
this type of work.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've full disclosure, I've been on exactly one cleanse. So I'm so new to the whole cleansing thing, but I also know people that have done it successfully for years and they love it and they do it regularly. So just out of curiosity, for someone like me, do you have any advice on like, I know it's individual, but like what would be a good like start? What would be like a good
Mhm.
intro to cleansing and why maybe?
That's why I created the 40-day green cleanse because it starts out with, you could even just do 50% green the first
Mm.
week. And 40 days seems so long to someone that's never cleansed before. So just do 10 days. And usually
Mm.
at the end of 10 days, they're like, I got this, you know. It takes
Oh,
about 3 days to, I call it get over the hump, because if you're getting off of caffeine and sugar and all the other things, processed food, some people go to McDonald's every morning, you know, for
yeah.
their sandwich. So there's people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And I always say don't go in hard, jump off the diving board, because then you're going to get a much more physical pain, headache, body pain, and
Mm.
you might need a lot more rest. Why don't you just go slow
I
and
like
take it
that.
out slowly and be
Yeah.
gentle with the slow so you don't feel like you're run over by a truck?
Mm.
Depending on how much glyphosate now is in the food, you know, there's all kinds of different things. So taking it slow, drinking a lot of water, going on walks in nature. It's a whole lifestyle preparation that many of us got on the treadmill to. America's all about achievement, right? That's an
Hmm.
achievement treadmill. And
It
a lot
is.
of us got on this mentality, this archetype, this masculine energy, even women, that we have to do it all to survive. And
Hmm.
so when we step off the treadmill, we're not sure what to do, you know,
Yeah.
and that's why the cleanse is there for support. The first 10 days is all about what do we do to purify the body? Drinking the water, you know, slowly, incrementally getting off of caffeine slowly, getting off of the sugar slowly so we're not hit by a truck, but knowing
Oh,
that those pains are part of the detox. And there's things that I like. I'm not a doctor, I cannot suggest supplements for people, but I can share what I'm taking, or maybe go see a natural doctor, holistic doctor who can supplement you on
yeah.
what you are missing. Um,
I love your concept of going in slow because there are not many people that talk about cleansing that's like, no, ease your way into it. You're
No.
probably the only one I've ever heard say, ease your way into it. It's okay.
You'd
And
have a lifetime to experiment. That's one of the words
yeah,
you did
yeah,
use. I always say our bodies, let's experiment because that's what doctors do. That's what holistic everyone is experimenting.
yeah,
And if we don't feel it out for ourselves, then we're not going to know if that's for us or not, unless you have a allergy, something like that, that you just can't do certain foods. But you'll know, right? Through the process of elimination, especially when you go into green foods, you don't have to think about it too much. Let's just eat what's green.
yeah.
I like to stick with the most simple things, like the shakes, the juices, the soups are huge for me. I love soup. It's simple, it lasts for days. I don't have to think about it. And then once I get over the first few, maybe a week, I'm able to have way more energy to experiment with all the food, all the different kinds of things. Like, let's make a lentil burger, all green ingredients. If you don't want to take it that extreme, like I said, do 50% green and see what that feels like. Start implementing the
Mhm.
drink, the tea that I offer people to incorporate healing teas, a chai tonic, being able to do like a ritual in the morning, a certain kind of breakfast that may be so different from what they're used to.
Yeah,
They'll start as the mindfulness quadrant comes up, quadrant two, then I start implementing the different ways to think about your food and how you're eating and why you're eating and what emotions are eating you up, different things that might
mm,
come out.
yeah,
And so simple is the best. Hydration and nutrition, feeding yourself with the spinach, green beans, just simple earth foods. It's really, really important. And taking it easier. I also say write a letter to everybody you know to tell them to pretty much get off your back. Do not offer me beer or wine or cake. And most importantly, it's for
yeah,
them. If I say no, I still love you. I'm doing
yes,
this for me because they also have an emotional breakdown when you start going into healing mode and you start actually creating boundaries around you and what you need and not
yeah.
eating burgers with your husband or wife. It's like, wait a minute, you don't love me anymore? Oh, you're too
Yeah,
good for
it's
me now.
super interesting. I haven't eaten beef or pork in 25 years. Okay. It's just my choice. That's what works for me. And some people in my family are like, well, you don't eat beef or pork. Well, what can I make you? What I'm like, I eat literally everything else. Like, I'm fine. Even when I was vegetarian for a while, it was like, well, but you're not eating any meat, so I should make you something special. I'm like, there's a salad over here and some veggies. I'm good. Like, I don't need it,
Yes.
but yeah, the whole kickback, the whole fear of like, well, what does this mean? And are you still a member of the family in some like
Hmm.
macro context? And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't eat pork steaks, man. It's okay. I still am still in the family. As long as you still want me, I'm here.
Right. It's
Yeah,
it's it's
yeah,
incredible. And I say, go to Thanksgiving with your beautiful green beans made the sauce made out of cashews and green onions, and it tastes so delicious and just like, hey, let's see who also thinks it's delicious.
yeah,
And usually people are so surprised. Oh, I brought this soup. Everybody ate it. Oh, I brought this green dish. Everybody was like asking me about cleansing and how do you do it? So you become an inspiration. And I always say, how do we become the light and not give our light away, but
mm,
just be a light. And if people want to also be inspired, then let them be inspired, including your children. There's no need to force any of this down your children's throat because if you so selfishly cook for yourself and like hoard it in the corner, I'm positive that your, family are going to come curious. What are you doing? I want some too. And that's how it works.
Yeah, I love that. I
And,
love that approach. That's great. So
uh,
if anyone that's watching and you heard you've mentioned the Rainbow Awakening program, it's a 8-week program that she's going to launch again in the new year, and it combines cleansing and ancestral healing and some energy and awareness and some really great things, and we're going to share some more information about that. So look in the Facebook link or in the chat box. And thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey, your experiences, both in healing and as someone who helps others in their healing. It's been really enriching. And yeah, I think I'm going to try incorporating some more greens today.
fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And thank you for putting all of this together. I'm excited for also what's all included in this program of you.
My guest, Shannon Tammy, is a professional home organizer. She is certified. She brings to her home organization a combination of psychology and sociology and productivity, which is an amazing combination. And she's been organizing professionally since 2009. She's here to talk about how to help us have harmony in our homes, and also how we as entrepreneurs can have more productivity. So welcome, Shannon. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm so honored, and I feel so great, like being chosen to be part of this whole summit thing. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so grateful to have someone to talk about this, because this is a big thing for all of us. We're balancing, most of us work in our homes, and balancing the home life and the work life, and then like maintaining a level of productivity, I know, is on the table for nearly everyone listening. So thank you for bringing your expertise to that. So with that being said, like, what are some of your favorite strategies?
Yeah. So like if I came into someone's home and they said, like, what are things that I can do to help keep order, or keep things in line instead of just trying to like scramble at the last minute? Or a lot of times people can't find things, so they go out and buy more things that they couldn't find. So what is a way to kind of help with that, right? And the biggest one is just trying to establish a home for the items. So you want to have a place for everything, because then you can, it'll just subconsciously and consciously be there when you go to look for it. And if you don't establish that home, it becomes something called clutter, because everything that is clutter is just basically a decision that hasn't been made yet. So once you make that decision as to where that goes, then it's not laying around anymore. So it's just a delayed decision. So
that's very like succinct. Like, clutter is a decision that hasn't been made. Like, I've never thought of it that way before, and it's so true. Like, I just don't know where to put it. Right.
Yeah. So people will just set it down, like, I'll get to that later. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. It's just a get to it later. And I will say 99% of the population and my clients have an issue with paper. And that is a huge one. So productivity with paper can take so long, because it's one piece of paper and you still have to determine, am I keeping this? Am I not? Where am I going to go with it? Do I have to make a file? Do I, And I know a lot of us are going towards like the paperless society, which is great because that will help with, the paper clutter, but there are still a lot of people that get mail and they just don't know how to process it or what to do with it, or how long to keep things. So I do have a document retention log, and you can find one out online too. You can go to, like type in document retention log from the IRS, and they'll tell you exactly how long to keep things, legally. And Yeah, that is a huge one. So I just
That's
wanted to hit
super
on that
helpful. Yeah.
topic.
Yeah,
a little
because
bit.
it's like with bank statements and stuff like that, we don't know, like, do we keep it for 7 years or longer? And, and then I think a lot of people stall out that at the how to rid themselves of this documentation that potentially has sensitive information on it. Like,
Yes. And that's another thing, right? So they will hold on to it because they're like, well, I need to shred it. And then they have like just this little bitty shredder and they don't have time to shred, because that takes forever too, right?
Yeah.
So I try to find free shredding events or things that, that might pop up, hey, you can take a box to there or a bag or something and help eliminate that paper clutter.
That's awesome. Yeah. 'Cause I do know someone who is listening who has boxes of things to shred sometimes and has a hard time with the paper organization. So yeah. So when you do have that straight piece of paper, when you do have just like a couple of things, what do you do with them? Like, should you make a folder?
Yeah, I guess it depends on if it is something that you would want to keep. So let's say for instance, your insurance policy. What you want to do there is it changes every 6 months or every year, right? So you don't need to keep the old one because you now have a new one, unless you were to refer back to it and go, okay, it went up. Why did it go up? And then do the comparison. But you can, you can shred the old one and then just keep the new one. You don't have to keep, 10 years worth of insurance policies or anything to that nature. But so that's kind of how I determine the questions, as far as asking, like, will you refer back to this? A lot of people with, medical papers with the explanation of benefits. Are you going back through it? Are you comparing it to the billing to make sure that you're doing this? So many people get stuck on, I should be doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep this because I should be doing it and I'm going to keep it there. Well, that also brings up the tie to that guilt. So do you really want that guilt along with that? Like, I should be doing it. Is that the only reason why you'd keep those? So I will tell people to keep things maybe for a year, see if you try, you do go back to it or you don't, and then make that decision whether or not something that you want to keep again for the following year. So just give a pause to it, right? I don't want to say, get rid of everything, because that's not my place to say that. I usually coach people to say, to make that own determination for themselves, because I don't ever tell them what to do. So
what do you do when they have the shoulds and they're kind of shaming themselves because I should do that and I haven't? No. How do you get them over that hump?
Yeah, I really try to focus on the internal struggle, right? So we all come down with that like internal struggle of whether or not what we're doing is the right thing. Nothing's the right thing. It's just your way of doing it, right? My way of doing things isn't necessarily going to be the same as anyone else's. It comes down to like that with home organization. The way that I organize or the way that I keep my house is not necessarily a way that somebody else should keep their house. How I look for my, my pens and pencils. Do I need them away or do I have to have them out? So everybody's different. And so I try to tell everybody to give themselves grace, because that is super important. We are all different. We all have our own little idiosyncrasies that make us who we are. And I just try to customize my organization, like an organizational system to them, whatever is going to work best for the person. And then they don't have to hopefully hold on to that guilt or those shoulds.
It seems like there's like this thing of like self-acceptance and figuring out what works for you and really like tapping into that and maximizing that.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
I was just gonna say, like, so, overall though, like looking in the grand scheme of an entrepreneur and you know, in terms of self-care, what can folks do like today to help themselves take some small steps towards making it a workable, comfortable, inspiring environment for them?
Yeah. Again, it's very interesting because some people, they love to have everything clear and have a clear space, right? So that any kind of physical clutter that's out will be a distraction.
Mm.
And then there's some that have piles everywhere and they are okay with that. It again is so custom to whomever that is. However, I do try to have a set standard of like, you really do need a clear working space, at least somewhere to write things down or,
Yeah.
a table
Yeah.
to do, just to spread out or something, you need some space that you have. And then I really try to focus on just the person as far as, like whether or not they're digital or paper. That's a big thing too, with how much space they have or how much they need. And focus on what you really, really need. Like, is it something that I need to write down or is it something that I need to type in? Do I like Post-its everywhere? That's a big thing too. So
Yeah.
a lot of us need like physical reminders to do things, right?
Yeah.
So do we need those? Do we need those prompts? So finding out whether a Post-it will do, physical Post-it, or a digital like reminder. So I have, reminders set up in my calendar, so digitally you can set those up as well, or an alarm go off, like one of the big things that I try to tell, I'm going to hit on this real quick, sorry, is try to limit yourself like a time frame of focus. Whether that's 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, try to, set a timer. And if you have a task to complete, like whether it's answering emails or writing emails or making calls, set that timer. And then you can adjust the timer based on, I got it done or I didn't get it done and I'm in my realm, I'm going to focus for a little bit longer and then take a break. So you want to take, 5-10 minutes or something like that, get up, go do something else, and then come back and do a different task. The other thing is to clump tasks together. So like I just said, like do all of your emails at once, do all of your calls at once, do something that's task driven, in a category together so that it's more productive.
I love that idea because, we tend to answer emails throughout the day and, and then that creates an unreasonable expectation of, immediate reply, instead of a normal expectation of reply within 24 hours, which is,
right.
And so that adds like an extra amount of pressure and stress on ourselves. So to have set times throughout the day to answer emails and send emails, I think is really a great idea.
Yeah. And I will say it does depend on if it's something that's urgent and can take you 5 minutes or less to write back a reply or to respond, then get it done. But if it is going to be something that you have to, formulate or like figure out what you're going to say or how you're going to say it, then, it takes longer than 5 minutes, then maybe chunk it in that category.
And not for nothing, with a little bit of ADHD going on, if you answer that urgent email, be prepared to take a minute to get your focus back, right?
Yes, huge. I work with a client that, we're kind of doing that same thing where I'm trying to, coach them on like, hey, just do it this way. It's really hard for people who are, neurodivergent. Oh my goodness gracious, that it becomes a little bit more challenging because you don't think the same way. So that's where the psychology comes into play too, where I get fascinated with the the mind and how we all are so cool and different, like our brains, the way that they function.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I know for myself, like I kind of tend towards like all the above. Like I do digital stuff, but I also very much like to have, I prefer to have, I think, written stuff, but sometimes I need the digital reminders, and then it's remembering to add the paper stuff to the digital stuff to get the digital reminders. So it's like, but yeah, I think that, like, what do you recommend, like, for people who are neurodiverse to get a little organized? Because I know that I tend to, and I know not all neurodiverse people work this way. I tend to kind of resist organization, but I actually feel a lot better and more focused and in a safer container when I am more organized.
Yes, I think it's interesting because being neurodiverse, you're not necessarily in a container, right? Your brain is like in a million different places, right? But love structure, because the structure is what gives that chaos a little bit of peace, right?
Yeah.
So
some
trying
boundaries.
to,
Yeah.
so trying
Yeah.
to create those, right? So
Mhm.
I guess trying to keep yourself from doing I guess, like I said, like trying to keep yourself from multitasking, because
Mm.
multitasking is actually counterproductive. Like
Mm.
a lot of people back, 20 years ago, we were all doing our interviews. Like, I love to multitask. I'm a great multitasker. Well, now
Right.
it's coming to be that you're not really being as productive because you're not completing the things that you did before.
Mm.
So, it comes to a circle of like, I got 5 minutes done here and 5 minutes done there and 5 minutes done there. So again, going back to like categorizing what tasks need to be done to complete a project, or, if it's a small task, that's fine. But if it's a big project, like break it down into little pieces, and try to figure out how much needs to be done each day. Really difficult thing too, because neurodiverse people have an issue with time blindness.
Mm.
So that means that you're not really aware of time as it passes.
Interesting.
It is very interesting, because you could say, oh, that's going to take me, some people say that's going to take me, oh, that'll take me like 10 minutes. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
It actually
3 hours later.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're just like, oh, I didn't realize that I was just going to get
Right.
hyper focused,
Right.
into this particular, it's just amazing. But that's where that timer comes into place.
Mm.
And what really helps a neurodiverse person is an analog clock, because then you can actually see time as it passes, because you can actually see the hours pass. And there is a product out there that I have recommended to friends and family and clients. It's called the Time Timer. And you can, at just timetimer.com, they have different products that have the clock, and you can buy them small or big or whatnot, but they have it just like an indicator, just a clock that has a timer on it for an hour, and a red section, like area, that decreases as the time goes out, so that you can actually see time as it passes. So that's a really huge thing for a lot of people, not even just like neurodiverse, but people in general just really don't pay attention to time. And time's such a wild concept, right? So
yeah.
it's just like, okay, I don't know how long that's going to take. And then trying to also gauge that afterwards, like, oh, that took me 20 minutes opposed to 5. So then going, okay, I know from now on that I need to dedicate 20 minutes to this particular task, or something to that effect, until you get that task, more, I guess, comfortable with that task or whatnot. If it's a new task, then, it might take longer the next time. So
just really kind of notice and gauge for future reference how long those things are going to take you. And if you haven't, then give yourself enough time instead of 10 minutes, maybe budget some extra time in there. Yeah.
Yes. And
I
that's
love that.
again where that, yeah, like that timer, like kind of checking in, you know, like, oh, this is taking me longer. So then, yeah. And then knowing going forward, this is really what it takes me. I'll have to like put that into my calendar. Time blocking is a huge thing. Not a lot of neurodiverse people love time blocking, and not even people in general. Like, it's like, I'm going to do this time block here, but then what's great about that is that it gives you that section of time that you can move around, right, in your calendar or whatnot. That's awesome. Neurodiverse people are driven by emotion. So if it is not urgent, or it's not something that you really love to do, you're most likely going to put that off. You're most likely going to move that around your calendar. So you really either have to have that person or somebody to be accountable to, which is a huge thing, or to just really have that drive to get it done. Or the other thing is to try to shift your mindset towards it so that it does become something that you love or you like. So, I mean, not that you're going to love everything, but
right.
It can shift if you can try to think of it in a way that there's got to be some kind of motivator there to get it done. So what is the motivation to get it done? So I'm going to give an example. So say Sally is depending on this email back or needs this reply back. And you know that you're just like, you need to do some research before you get that email back. And you're like, ah, God, that's going to take a long time. I don't know if I can do that. And so shifting that mindset, like, oh, but Sally is depending on this. And I know I don't want to let her down. So that emotion comes into play, right? So you're bringing more emotion into the task, which will help make it a little bit easier to like respond or to feel that, you know, maybe sense of urgency that you could get it done.
So tapping into like some kind of emotional quality, whether it be relief that the task is done and we don't have to think about it anymore, or someone depending on us, like in your example. So finding that inner emotion that we can tap into. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And there's also like a sense of reward afterwards. If you completed a task that you really didn't like to do, you could, you know, I love chocolate breaks. So
yeah, right. Yeah. Who doesn't?
Right? So getting a little chocolate or something afterwards, or taking a walk or something like that. Something that you could reward yourself with afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's also helpful.
I read an article about couples who took money dates, right, to talk about their finances. And I thought it was fascinating. And one couple was brilliant about it because they rewarded themselves with a date night afterwards. Like they had a money date and then an actual date night to blow off some steam about it. So I think that reward element is something that we can really utilize. Like, oh, you know, you a little resistant to sending out your email, but hey, you can have a little dance party afterwards, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I've not heard of that. I have helped in my past, I've helped people with like kind of like financial coaching, you know, like what do we have in your budget? You know, like let's make a budget. Do you have a budget? Do you,
right.
You know, so, and then the couples, it could be a very difficult conversation if you don't have the same mindset. You know, one might be a spender and one might be a saver, and then you have difficulties, right? And that seems to be one of the bigger stressors in our lives is the money, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a brilliant idea of doing that. Awesome.
So, what are other things that we could do you think, to help us stay focused and productive as we go about our days here?
Yeah. So if we're talking about entrepreneurs and, you know, doing office work versus, you know, home organizing, I have other tips for that stuff. But one of the big things that I have discovered through my education as well as just through this profession is I mean, not everybody is driven by this, but music is tremendously, like helpful. It is therapeutic. It can raise, you into a different mindset. So the big thing for me is like, if I'm home organizing and I say, a client will be like, oh, do you mind if I turn on music? No, turn on whatever you love. Because they'll ask me like, what do you like? I'm like, don't worry about me. You do you. So, whether it's, they're jamming out to like, the 60s or 70s or 80s music, I don't care. They're going to be happy doing what they're doing because it's fun. Then you're bringing an aspect of fun in.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've found is the therapeutic portion of it is that music has touched parts of the brain that have shut off previously. So people with traumatic brain injury or, like Alzheimer's, boom, they're on when music hits their brain. The brain waves go crazy because it taps into a subconscious level that we don't know. So there's also something that's called frequency music or binaural music that will help keep focus. So I try to find if you put in headphones are best for the binaural beats, but it basically goes from one ear to the next. It really helps with people that are neurodiverse because it's keeping that brain from, focusing, like too much going on. It's actually keeping them focused and on task. So it's helped in that realm.
So you listen to the binaural beats while you're working?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's great about that music, frequency music, as well as binaural music, is it contain lyrics. It doesn't contain like beats that you'll like be jamming out to. It's kind of like a background thing, almost like white noise would be, but it also raises the frequency level. So everything in our world has a frequency, a vibration. Right. And if you can find that vibration to lift up and get out of a certain mindset, that will help too. There's people with, that are grieving, that are, that might have, like self-worth, self-confidence issues, or things that would prevent them from being their most productive selves, right? And then that's also what you want to tap into too, is like, why? What is the driving force under why am I feeling not so productive, or why and most of it comes down to, like you said, like shame. We're huge on shame. So let's try to break that mindset. Let's try to get out of that mindset. Let's do something that can help raise you out of that. So having music and trying to do something that would be like a self-love frequency, having something in the background that would be a self-love one. It can really dramatically change your mindset and your vibration. So it's something that I'm very passionate about.
That's awesome.
Finding ways to increase and shift that mindset to get more productivity or get that person out of that, little lump,
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
So let's address the whole shame and self-love aspect of home organization and life organization, because there's such a correlation here. Like shame is that thing that keeps you rooted and anchored, and unless you're able to address that and deal with it, then you're going to stay in the same spot. There's no forward movement. There's no progress. So addressing the shame, to me, shame, I heard it once equated to the secret sin, right? So we go to confession. Some people go to confession to say their sin so they could be absolved of the sin, but it's not about someone giving you absolution. It's about speaking it, because the shame's the thing we don't want to tell people.
Right.
So those piles of mail and paperwork and clothes in the closet that you've never gone through or looked at in the last 5 years, like those are shameful. But the minute you invite someone into that conversation with you, then it eradicates the shame,
Yes.
because
And it
it
shifts
doesn't have the hold.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it shifts everything. Like, we've been talking about, the mind shift. It also helps like space. Like once I go into a home and do any home organizing and you move things around, it shifts the energy in the space.
Yeah.
And then you're right. Like if I'm dealing with someone who has had grief or loss, who, any kind of trauma in their background with shame involved with it, they may, like I'll tell you, like 100% of the people don't really tell me that, that's not really what they're going to tell me is like their shame. Right. But the internal struggles, like can show externally everywhere. Right. It's just super apparent. And when you have someone who is out like spending too much or buying things just because, or got a good deal or couldn't pass this up, it was just something, like, oh, I needed this, or, you didn't really need it. Right. But most of the time,
but it's validating something. Yeah.
It's validating something. It's filling that void. There's a void with shame. I've got to fill this with something, right? I've got to get some kind of pleasure because I feel so bad. And I don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
So dealing with that, I'm not there as a psychologist on site, right? I have a little bit of training, but I am not a psychologist by any means. I do not claim to be. I can merely try to coach and find out, ways to shift that mindset, right? To get things to not feel so shameful. Like, okay, well, what are you really trying to accomplish? What do you really want out of life? Do we need to build a vision board? Do we need to build some kind of way for you to think about this in a different manner? Do you need me to be accountable? Like there are times where, I'll say, if you're going into a store, and I have clients that do this, please tell me I don't need to buy any more, whatever, blank.
Right. Yeah.
Please be there to tell me I don't need any more of these. I'm like, okay. So having that person to be accountable, like, it's funny because I've actually had clients say to me, I always think, what would Shannon do?
I love getting into people's heads like that.
Oh, that's so interesting. So it's really very cool.
Yeah.
Because, then you're really trying to like put that awareness around it, right? That's the huge part, is just building awareness around it, getting into it. And whether or not you dive into it internally to do the work to get through that shame is one thing. Not everybody's on that journey. It is a hard journey, but it is rewarding.
It's very rewarding.
It's very.
Yeah.
But there are ways to get, through that lightly, without really diving deep. So,
I mean, even just clearing the piles will help eradicate some of the shame. And then you could go back and kind of address some of the underlying emotions that caused the piles to begin with.
Yes. And what's so cool about that is that I have used this analogy where I compare, organizing or like doing what I'm doing to a parfait. And instead of an onion, I got this from Shrek because instead of an onion, it's a parfait. Everybody loves a parfait because there are layers to it. I tell clients that all the time. We're going to just deal with the first layer. Like, you wanted me to come in and do your pantry, right? There are years worth of, canned goods that you don't need anymore or things like that, right? We're going to clear that out. We're going to get all that clear. And then they're like, well, now I would like you to do this, or we can go and do this, so it's just building that layer. and just kind of getting it completed one by one instead of, all at once. You're going to just,
Yeah.
eat the
Yeah.
whole parfait.
One thing, one step at a time, just focus on one immediate step.
Right.
But I love how this is just the step thing is reminding me of something you said at the very beginning of like you look at the big picture or the vision board or whatever the big picture task is and break it down into little tasks and kind of like reverse engineer it and
Yeah.
start just do one little task and the sense of accomplishment behind that. So the whole house is a wreck, but start with one room and then start with one aspect of the room. And what do you need to do that aspect?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also if you're talking about home organizing, excuse me, one of my tips that I tell people is if you're in that room, you're doing that room, I like to first off go in a clockwise motion, like figuring out what needs to go and what needs to stay and all of that. If you know an item goes into another room, don't go into that room. Stay into your room, put it by the door or an exit or something like that, that you can then, at the end of you getting through the room, you can put those things away into where you were thinking they would go. So like, let's say, in my front room, I might have, shoes or something that I know need to go upstairs into the room, so I just put those on the steps or whatnot. And then you can take those up when you're done getting everything out of that room that doesn't belong there, so that all you're focusing on is one room at a time.
I love that. Yeah.
Because most of the time we'll go into that room, realize, oh, wait, I didn't do that. I've got to go do this and this and this. And then you're not getting back into that room to get everything done because you're doing other things that needed to be done.
The focus left the building.
Yes, it is. It is. It's huge.
When you were talking about music, I know that there's a specific kind of music that I listen to when I'm trying to focus. And for me, as part of my neurodiversity, I find that having like that one sensory thing just taken care of, so I'm not really listening to what else is going on around me, like it's kind of like wearing a hood almost to have that sensory coming in and just taken care of. It's like, oh well, my ears are just they're not having to focus, they're just there, they're just like listening in like just in passing, but that gives focus for the rest of me. So yeah, it's really interesting how like things like that can really come into play. Like I know some neurodiverse people have like these little like cubicle things they set up on their desks to eliminate visual distractions. And
so that also plays into our strengths of how we learn best, right? So some of us are auditory. Some of us are, like we have to have like no distraction or nothing visual, so we know that we can't do that. So that also takes awareness, right? Like how do you best see things? And it's very interesting to me because most neurodiverse people they want everything put away. They don't want to see it. But they need to see it because they won't remember it's there.
Yes.
so you're like, well, so you have to almost come with a compromise of let's try to make it more attractive, that it's still there so you see it, but it's not like clutter, like visual.
It's got to be pretty and inspiring, but still there so I don't forget it exists.
Right. And I love that you brought that sensory thing in because that is super huge. Whether we like those fidget things are really big, right? So something sensory to touch every now and then, or to feel pressure, like the weighted blankets or something like that, to kind of have those along with it is helpful to keep you grounded. It's a big thing to keep you grounded so that you can focus.
Interesting. Oh, well, we've covered a lot of territory and it seems like there's still a ton more we could talk about.
Oh my gosh, that's right. It's like we tipped the iceberg.
Yeah. So you know, as someone who does business in their home, and, you know, just, I love how you're like, you know, block the time. I've heard that before. I think
Right.
that's a great idea. What I know for me is when my brain is full, then my emotional threshold also is full, right? So I
Mhm.
have less tolerance for anything that could be positively or negatively stressful. So
Mhm.
for me, it's important to brain dump after that
Yeah.
block time. And do you have any tips on a good, effective brain dump? Because I don't know that mine are always working for me.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that, because most neurodiverse people have a shorter attention span, right? It's like, because there's so many things going on, you know, internally, it's as if your focus time is shorter because
Mm.
there's so many things coming at you. You're more apt to take in, you know, visual or auditory or whatever things, and processing many things at once. And the big thing, I guess, for that, the brain dump part, right? So I'm not sure what you do now, but I know that you had mentioned writing. So the writing part could be it.
Yeah.
A brain dump. So the other thing that I think about is if you are physically, like if you're feeling physically stressed out, like if you're to a point where you're like, you're anxious, you're having heart palpitations or anxiety, you know, panic attack or something like that. If you're feeling that, then you want to do something that's mental. So a crossword puzzle, a word search, something that switches that brain from one side to the next. So, you know, you're just not in that fight or flight stage anymore.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, if you're mentally, you're like, I have hit my limit. I am done.
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. And go out and take a walk. Do something physical, do some yoga stretches, do something physical to get your brain to shift. So that's
I love
also
that.
something that,
Yeah. So complementary, do the other thing.
yes, because that's where your brain is getting stuck. So it's like, okay, I'm doing too much of, you know, like, like I need to go out and do something. So
sometimes I think sometimes it's so easy with our phones and stuff. I think sometimes it's so easy to just grab your phone when you're done, you know, with your focus time, and just like play a game or scroll through Facebook or Instagram or something like that. And then it's like, well, I don't know that I necessarily relieved the stuff that's going on. Like, I don't necessarily know that that's gone anywhere. I just didn't think about it for a while, you know, instead of allowing a total decompression that a walk would offer.
Yes.
So I think
And
that's a brilliant suggestion.
Thanks. I think that it's important to just know your limits too, and not get too stressed out, you know. It's hard. That's where that, you know, it's a shame thing too, you know, like I should be doing this and I should be able to get this done, and why am I not? And just breathe and take a walk.
There's been a number of times in the past week where I've told my partner, because, you know, putting on the summit, and I'm just like, I'm not making dinner. I got nothing. I got no ideas.
I can't do it.
And I love to cook. I love to cook. And I'm just like, I have zero ideas. I don't have any energy to put towards it. We're going to go to our little favorite restaurant because that's it.
And that's okay. Like that's that's a good way to cope with it, right? You know, not
accepting
to
my
overdo
limitations.
it. Accept your limitations, not you know, overdoing it and being graceful.
And it has actually helped me to make sure that I'm taking some balancing time with like doing some yoga and some breathing and taking some space away and outside even. I haven't gotten my hike in the last 2 weeks. I think that's what's going on.
That's super important when we do our self-care, right? Self-care, it's huge.
That's what it's all about.
So
doing all of this, I would say, is self-care. Like doing this entire conversation is self-care. So looking at home and office organization and life organization, like how else would that be self-care, do you think? Like what other advice do you have for people to truly take care of themselves through this modality?
Yeah, I think for me, I've just heard it through my clients, that they are just so grateful and relieved. The amount of pressure that we put on ourselves to have a perfect home or a
Mm,
perfect business, the perfectionism part of it, right? That we're
yeah,
like, we've got to have these appearances of
yeah,
like everything's, great. And just the relief of getting through the stuff and knowing that you accomplished that, or that you're working towards it. Like,
yeah,
we might not be done with a project, but the first day that I'm there, they're like, I feel so much better. Just
yeah,
getting, just, bringing a number one, like bringing awareness to it, taking action, and then like the rewarding part of it, like, oh my gosh, I did that, and then feeling accomplishment. And that just it speaks volumes. Speaks
yeah.
volumes.
I mean, if there's a task that needs to be done, you can always ask your bestie to check in on you and make sure you did it the next day, or you can hire a coach like Shannon, or,
Yeah.
anything like that. I think that that's a really great idea.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love all of this. Like, I think it's super important because, they say what you do in one aspect of life is what you do in all aspects of life. So, looking at
Yeah.
that, I do equate the state of my office space with the state of my brain. And I know
Yeah.
some people don't, but taking a look at that, is it reflective of the state of brain that I want to have? And
Mhm.
so yeah, this is fantastic stuff. And that perfectionism piece is really potent. I'm so glad you brought it up, because with social media and everyone's showing their best sides, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like none of us are alone. We are perfectly imperfect. We are all going through stuff. We all have messes that
Yes.
somewhere, whether
Yes.
whether it's in our office or in our lives, there's a mess somewhere to be dealt with, internally, externally, it doesn't matter. Sometimes often it's both, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, like, take it easy on yourself. Like, why do you have to be perfect? Who told you you
Yeah.
have to be perfect? And this is like a little mini coaching moment, right?
Yeah.
Like, because perfection is an illusion. There's no such thing. Like, you could work
Mhm.
your ass off every day of your life to try and be perfect, and you'll never be perfect. So
Right.
take a breath and slow down
Yeah.
and just be okay with who you are and where you're at. And yeah, you've got those things that you want to do, but you'll get there, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also just for me, there's one of my colleagues has a great podcast. It's called Getting to Good Enough. And that's the
Mm,
thing. That's what we
yeah.
want. We just want to be good enough, like, and that
Yeah.
is such an internal, again, struggle, right? You just kind of want to make sure that you're aligning your, values and things to what you feel is perfect. People will ask me all the time when I go into their houses, I bet your house looks perfect. No,
It's good
I have
enough.
a 9-year-old child and my house
Right.
is not perfect,
Right.
It's fine though. It works for me. Whatever, and I tell people that all the time. Whatever is going to work for you, I don't have any, like, I'm just there to support you. I
Yeah.
am just here to support you. So
No
no
judgment.
judgment. Yeah,
Mhm.
whatever needs to be done. If you feel like it's causing some kind of chaos or distress in your life, having, the clutter or having too many papers or whatever it is, I'm here to support you. So I just try to do that and then try to build in that, self-acceptance of like, hey, I'm not going to be perfect. It's okay. Or to
Yeah.
like just say to yourself a mantra of like, I'm perfectly imperfect. Or,
Yeah.
because we're all perfect in our own ways. If we could just shift our mindset to think that about ourselves, that would be huge,
Yeah.
you know, just getting rid of that.
Yeah. I like to
Perfectionism.
say I'm good enough, because I think the word enough
Mhm.
sometimes satisfies that question mark in our brains.
Yeah.
You know, am I enough? Is it enough? You know,
Yes.
am I doing enough? You know,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
good enough. I think that feels good and resonant to me.
Yeah.
But you know, the perfectly imperfect thing works for people too, and that's worked for me in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just, I know there's another saying and it was there, but then it escapes me. But yeah, just getting to like good enough, like feeling good about what you just did, like, you know, or what the way that you're living your life, you know, it's
Yeah.
just, it's huge.
And celebrate your wins, like even if it's a
Celebrate.
little
Oh
bitty
my
win.
gosh. The
If you put that
rewards.
little paper away, celebrate it, right? Like
Yeah.
give
And,
yourself
and
that emotional reward.
exactly. And noticing it too. That
Mhm.
again, if we're just more like present and aware of what we're doing,
Mhm.
I think we'd have more gratitude for the things that we actually do. Like
Yeah.
if we built a list around all the things that we did in a day, I think we'd be like, wow, I'm pretty doggone amazing, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can't believe
Even
I
if
did
it's
all
things
those
like I
things.
fed the dog.
Right. But even then, like I took a
Right.
shower today. If somebody
Yeah.
is super depressed or is on, you know, like
Yeah.
I did that, and then just reward yourself. Yeah, huge.
So when you work with clients, is there any kind of special like trick or something that you do sometimes to kind of get the ball rolling for them?
That's I don't know. I just so how I work is I usually do an intake call and kind of get an idea of what they need, feel out, you know, whether or not I'm the right person for them, because again,
Mm.
it is such a personal journey
Yeah.
that you really want to make the right match with personality, and if I have the skill set that they seek or need at that point in their life,
Mhm.
I try to take that in. There are other organizers here in St. Louis and around the country that if you needed a coach that I didn't necessarily match with them, I could refer them to. Or in organizing, you know, being part of NAPO, the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals. There's a St. Louis chapter here, as well as a national and international clients,
wow.
you know, our colleagues. So I have a plethora of people that I could refer to, but I usually try to get that intake call first, find out if I'm the right person, find out what they need, find out if they're ready. That's the huge one. People might
Yeah.
think they're ready, but they're not really, really ready. So it will, so that's really a big thing too, is just figuring out, are you really ready for all of this? And then having a first session, whether it's home organizing or office or productivity or whatnot, having the first session. I try to do it in person. But again, if they're not here locally, then it is online. But just having like an hour or two of productivity time coaching is good. I don't try to go too longer than that, because again, everybody starts to shut down.
Well, it seems like it could be a very, like we talked about the shame aspect and stuff. It seems like it could be a very emotional process. So I would imagine if they did tackle a big task like that had a lot of emotion attached to it, that you would only want to do bits and pieces of that at a time.
Yes, and we can only take in and process things in a certain amount of time. Also developing new strategies and new habits can be challenging, trying to figure them out. Like, what exactly do you need? I can give you 50 strategies or 50 different ones, but there's really only, maybe one or two that are going to work for you, right? What are those? Like there's so many different strategies. So
yeah.
And trying to
I wanted
customize.
to ask that. So do you find that when you help people empty things, right, get rid of stuff, do you find that they're replacing it with something else that's maybe not the stuff, but like maybe an emotional quality or but here's why I ask, because I
Yeah.
have a belief that I've figured this out from my own life. This is what's worked for me. If I try and let something go, I leave a void in my life, and that void gets filled in by something, whether it's intentional or it's not intentional. And I want to be intentional about what's filling that void, because otherwise it might be more junk that I need to clear. Does that make sense?
Total sense to me. Yes. That is again where you really want to dive, like if you're ready and you really want to dive deep as far as what is that void about? Why do I feel that void? Why am I there?
Mhm.
I feel like that is going to answer all of those questions, because you're right. We will, as humans, continue to try to seek out some way to fill that void of whatever it is that we're lacking. And, a lot of times it's, just trying to build in more, I use that word, but awareness, but more also love
Yeah.
for your inner child.
Yeah.
Because it's usually the inner child that's reaching out and trying to grab whatever it is that it was lacking whenever you were a kid. So trying to figure out, like, I was never given gifts, so that's why I'm out buying. I was never given this. So one of my friends said she has a day, a month or something that she has for her inner child. And she has one day where she goes around and she does whatever her inner child tells her to do. I know that
Nice.
might be a little woo woo for everybody, but it's cool because then you can go, I really want that popsicle, or I really want this, or what, and you can just have your inner child day,
Well, I mean, if you get rid of that pile or that mess that's been holding you back, that could be a way of filling that back in with something that feels good and right and loving and nurturing. Yeah. You mean, even if you're throwing away your old bank statements after a little while, then like you can still like, oh, I feel more peace, or I have more room for love, just having that intention behind what's there to fill the place.
Yeah, I think so. And also just with that, it's so interesting. I'm sorry, I'm stopping because I'm like, the physical space will change. Your internal space will change. And you'll notice that. You'll feel it right away when you get out of stuff, when you give those, I've like 50 bags of clothing away, and you're like, wow, I really feel so much better. I can find what I can find. I love the things in my closet now. I love to go in and look at the space, and it's beautiful and it makes me feel happy, right? That, and then holding on to that happy feeling. Like we said before, like rewarding yourself for doing such a thing. Like that was amazing. How are you going to reward yourself? How do you like to, what do you love to do? Try to figure that out. What do you really love to do? Do you need to go out and take a hike? Let's, schedule that. Like, get that reward done, like that is huge, just being able to, like be one with the room, and just like, maybe you just want to do like snow angels in your closet. I don't know, but just like to feel like, hey, I did this, and
I love
pat yourself on the back.
You said it's woo, and it's kind of woo, but it's also really cool to like take that time to nurture that inner child, because you're right. It's our inner children that have been kind of stuck in the subconscious, and they're running the show, and they're like, I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable, blah, 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 and so validating them in that you are good enough, you are lovable, you deserve that, popsicle, you deserve to go swing on the swing set, you deserve to, do whatever you want. I love that. If it's nourishing for you, who cares? If you want to wear a costume,
why not?
One
Who
Christmas,
cares?
One Christmas I dressed up as an elf and I literally went into a mall and handed out mini candy canes because it felt good.
Just because,
Just
yeah.
because.
Celebrate life
you know,
as it is.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? Why? Yeah. Like not everything has to be so serious all the time.
Yeah.
It really
yeah.
doesn't, because then you're just like, it becomes, I don't know, it becomes less enjoyable whenever you're serious about it. And you just want to bring
Yeah.
love and, cheer.
Right.
Being an elf,
especially, yeah, being an elf, handing out candy canes. I mean,
Yeah.
and especially when you're the type of person who has a history of taking yourself too seriously, who has a history of like looking at the negative and has a history of feeling the shame and all of that stuff. Like, if you can bring that peace and that levity and that joy and that fun, why not? How would
Yeah.
that make it so much better?
Yeah.
I mean,
And then also it's very interesting because some people might stop and go, oh, what will people think?
yeah.
And then you have to go, what does it matter what everybody else thinks? You have to kind
Yeah.
of get that question in there too. Like, just worry about what you want to do. Don't think about what don't mind their business. You've got your own business,
But yeah. The resonant theme is you have to live your life for you.
Yeah.
And you have to like the life that you're living for you.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out that equation as far as like letting other people influence you or not. Is it a positive or negative? Is it expansive or restrictive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Huge.
Shannon, this was such a great talk. I appreciate you so much.
Oh my gosh, this was so fun. It was so
Good.
fun. So
Good.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your expertise, and we look forward to hearing more from you.